3 minutes after 10, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And once you start, you just can't stop. I'm not talking about Pringles. I am talking about rhyming. Once you start seeing the rhymes, you can't, because the Starmer drama has now escalated into a streeting meeting. There is about which many people presumably are tweeting. So they're tweeting the streeting meeting in the midst of the Starmer drama. A Prime Minister, of course, who should have been making things calmer. So I'm going to try to stop now, but I'm going to struggle. So please bear with me. It was supposed to be... God, anyone else just hear a Streets lyric kick in there? Or it was supposed to be so easy. It was supposed to be a sea change. It was supposed to represent an end to a very overused word, not least by me, psychodrama. It was supposed to be the end of psychodrama just 2 short years ago, when a managerial and exciting man, whether that's fair or not, that was his public persona, a managerial, competent, process-driven managerial politician was making his way into Downing Street after a succession of either morally bankrupt or intellectually inadequate predecessors. Or, in the case of Theresa May, I think a perfectly competent politician who was required to pretend that reality was not reality as a consequence of the Brexit vote. I have no idea what the history books will have to say about Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. It feels already like a punctuation mark, doesn't it? A semicolon, perhaps. A semicolon of a Prime Minister. It feels like a semicolon. I can't think off the top of my head of anything significant that he did. The ridiculous Rwanda plan. I think he inherited, didn't he, and just refused to put in the bin because he was, I presume, frightened of the response from people who had absolutely no idea what the numbers were and what the reality of that policy would have involved, i.e. most of his own party. I look back on Rishi Sunak at the moment as a punctuation mark, and I don't mean that unkindly. I just think he was like pressing pause on the poison that went before. So if you have the morally bankrupt Boris Johnson, the intellectually absent Liz Truss, then Rishi Sunak came along, who was neither morally bankrupt nor intellectually inadequate, but he just pressed pause on a process that began in 2015, or 2010 technically, but effectively in 2015, 2016. And Keir Starmer, whether you welcomed his election or not, it was very fleeting, the streeting meeting. Whether you welcomed his election or not, Keir Starmer was supposed to stop the drama. He was supposed to usher in a period of, whichever way you dice it, either calmness or dullness, or both, wasn't he? I mean, that was the thing upon which almost everybody was agreed, that at least we're not going to have the ludicrous internecine warfare that typified so many of the previous years. I mean, Theresa May's premiership was absolutely characterised by internecine warfare. And on the other side of the house, so of course was Jeremy Corbyn's. Then along came Boris Johnson and tried to rip up all the rule books and almost got away with it. He probably would have got away with it if it wasn't for you pesky kids. And if anyone in British politics has ever looked like a Scooby-Doo villain, then Dominic Cummings would probably be the winner of all the prizes. And then, of course, that brief foray of Liz Truss, an attempt to prove that reality really doesn't matter. A sort of premiership built upon the presumption that financial gravity doesn't exist. And that went well, as you know. And then, as I say, the semicolon, the pause politician, the pause button politician, Rishi Sunak, who was never really equipped or entitled to make massive and meaningful change to the country, but at least he wasn't Boris Johnson or Liz Truss. So everyone sort of gave him a bit of a break. So much so, of course, that his succession to the leadership was entirely unchallenged, because even the Conservative Party that had put Liz Truss in charge by that point had sort of thrown their arms up in the air and just gone, please make it stop. And Keir Starmer made it stop. And he was supposed, of course, to make lots of other things stop as well. And those things, most obviously, were internecine warfare, drama, and chaos. And this morning, again, whether you like it or not, because I'm struggling with the Venn diagram, how much of the brouhaha is media created and how much of the brouhaha is media reported. I'm not struggling unduly because the election results of last week were catastrophic, but not unprecedented. Catastrophic, but not unprecedented for the sitting government. The only thing unprecedented about those results was that the major party of opposition benefited not a jot from the epic unpopularity of the party of government. That is unheard of. That is unprecedented. That is a mark of a very changing world. But I mean, it is obviously ridiculous to suggest that all of the talk of leadership change, all of the talk of crisis, all of the talk of chaos is down to journalists being addicted to drama. In this case, of course, to Starmer drama. But when you've got the trade unions, 11 of the biggest unions, effectively pulling the plug or calling time on a premiership, then it is a matter that extends far beyond the concerns of plutocrat, oligarch, right-wing media owners and their lickspittles. I mean, this is the unions now saying that's enough to Keir Starmer, saying you can't go. It doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean it will come to pass, but you can't pretend it doesn't matter. You can't pretend it's all down to the Daily Mail or Rupert Murdoch, as I am sometimes tempted to do. So he was supposed to stop the chaos. He was supposed to stop the internecine warfare. He was supposed to stop the instability. All of the things he was supposed to stop have not stopped. Again, I don't think that's an opinion. I think that's counting. We could today have another conversation about who you want to be Prime Minister this time next year. The Fleeting Streeting meeting in the middle of the Starmer drama suggests that the change, were it to come, is not going to be coming in the next 48 to 72 hours. And when it does come, it will be an announcement of a later change if it comes at all. So I think the moment has passed in terms of immediate and signal change, but the moment of considering future change is absolutely still smack where we are. Why has Keir Starmer failed to stop the rot? The democratic rot, the political rot. Why? Because I do think it's important to take a broader sweep of recent history when you're talking about the state of the nation. It's ridiculous not to, frankly. Keir Starmer is a flawed man, but frankly, who isn't? Answer, well, women. But they're flawed women. We are all flawed humans, aren't we? Keir Starmer is not in the pay of foreign-based billionaires in the way that previous prime ministers and current party leaders are. He is not detached entirely from economic reality in the way that Liz Truss was. He is not dedicated to completely ignoring the rules and protecting his cronies from proper accountability and examination. I mean, some of the stuff that went on under Boris Johnson would have stopped traffic if we lived in a country with a half-honest media. I mean, even just little stuff like suggesting that they all need to form a square around Priti Patel. And I think the second time she broke the ministerial code. And you look at how the right-wing media deals now with any breaches of the ministerial code, and you have essentially a case study in epic hypocrisy. And Keir Starmer has actually accepted resignations from politicians in his own cabinet who did things that would have probably got them promoted in a Boris Johnson cabinet. So this idea, and everyone's doing it, I'm afraid, this idea that that he is proving to be as bad as predecessors is precisely what you would say if you had been corrupt enough to defend his predecessors. And I use the word corrupt very advisedly. If you had been morally or materially corrupt enough to defend Boris Johnson in particular, and Liz Truss as well, then you would be desperate to pretend that where Keir Starmer finds himself now is in any way similar to where those two politicians took themselves and indeed the country. But you cannot argue with the failure to stop the chaos, the failure to stem the internecine warfare, the failure to bring basic stability, dullness and stability. were what was needed. And I think it is absolutely fascinating to ask you two questions. Why has Keir Starmer failed to stop the political rot? Why does it feel like we're in another cycle of chaos and competition? It was the one thing that I would probably have put money on 2 years ago not happening. And here we are 2 years later. So why? Why has he? And I think, and you may well prove me wrong with your answer to the first question, but I think intrinsic to that question is the question of responsibility. How much of this, you've noticed this question just creeping up on the outside lane, is the country actually ungovernable? Have we reached a point as a consequence of various factors where no Prime Minister is ever going to get an even break? It is going to become polarised, vicious, divisive and binary, with essentially the main divide in British politics between being people who accept and acknowledge reality and people who peddle and pretend to believe in fantasy. And not unlike what has happened in the United States of America, although you will struggle to find anybody who would mount a spirited defence of where the Democratic Party finds itself at the moment. But a basic divide between reality and fantasy, between truth and lies. And if you're governing in the world of truth, you are probably on a hiding to nothing. You're probably on a hiding to nothing. So, why do you think Keir Starmer has failed to stop the rot? And how much of it is down to him? How much of it is down to the person as opposed to the politics? 0345 6060 973. How much of Keir Starmer's current plight is his fault? And how much is simply a consequence of circumstance? I am not going to answer that question at this point in proceedings, partly because I can't with any great confidence, but I am going to tell you, as of 16 minutes after 10 this morning, much to my own surprise after yesterday's programme, I kind of want him to stay put for now and possibly for the foreseeable, because the more I contemplate the possible alternatives and what the delivery of those alternatives would involve, the more I think, better the devil you know. That is a position from which I am very, very persuadable, but it's where I find myself now. So, why has Keir Starmer failed to do the one thing that he seemed best qualified to do, stop the drama and the chaos? How much of that failure is personal? How much of it is down to him? And how much of it is political, down to the country that we now inhabit, the political environment in which we all live? And just as a side order, I personally don't want any more chaos and instability, and I don't see how a leadership challenge, a leadership battle of any type or ilk does anything but guarantee at least a good few more months of internecine warfare, instability and chaos. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. 1017, I'm nearly there. There is another question that we've never actually got round to asking. Partly because it involves, I think, speculating upon the motivation of slightly mad people. But the visceral, personal hatred of Keir Starmer is unignorable. And it will be driving a lot of the MPs and possibly even the union leaders who are calling time on his premiership. It strikes me as being hideously unfair. I mean, by all means, point out his dullness or his lack of charisma or critique his intonation. But, I mean, apart from obvious lies online about his private life, which, of course, all the usual suspects have signed up for, what on earth explains why this relatively innocuous man has managed to excite such extraordinary levels of personal, vituperative dislike, even, and I don't like using this word in the context of politics, even hatred? Is that enough to be going on with as we await the King's speech? And while we await the King's speech, give me a little steer on how much Dimbleby you want from me. I don't really recognise anyone. I don't know what any of them are called. I've been doing this for 20 years. I still couldn't tell you the difference between a black rod and a pink stocking. As I get older, my facial recognition skills are diminishing, so I probably won't even recognise household name politicians as they make their way. The only thing I can do with any confidence is describe to you the body language between Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch as they make their way from the House of Commons, I think, to the House of Lords, although possibly Westminster Hall. I don't even know where it takes place. 20-something years I've been covering the King's Speech live. Obviously, it was previously known as the Queen's Speech. See, I'm not completely stupid. And I still, if you put me on Mastermind, I'd get 0 on what goes on, what happens, who does what, where it all unfolds and what it means, except the body language between the two leaders. And here is a question, actually, pertinent to, you don't need to answer it, pertinent to the question with regards to chaos, internecine warfare and instability. When is the last time, genuine question, the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition appeared civil as they made their way together down the corridors of power prior to the King's Speech? When was the last time they looked as if they would be able to break bread and enjoy a meal together? What were the last two? The last leader of the opposition and Prime Minister. Actually, that's a game. You can play that. Text me on 84850 or WhatsApp me on 03456060973. Let's get the phone in, up and running after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Cameron and Miliband is the most popular suggestion, and I guess that's true, although we had some early indications under Ed Miliband's leadership of the Labour Party of just how completely hideous our newspapers were when they attacked his dead father in the most extraordinary of terms. But David Cameron was not either encouraging of or responsible for that hideousness. It was entirely on Paul Dacre, the editor of the Daily Mail, dancing on the grave of a dead war hero. Absolutely extraordinary conduct. But, of course, as Brexit edged ever closer, it became more and more in character, if you like. But it's Starmer we're talking about today, and his failure to do the one thing that enemies and admirers alike thought that he was best qualified to do, to stop the drama. Anna is in Oxford to kick things off. Anna, what would you like to say?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
I wasn't expected to be first on. So my theory is, and I've had this theory for a long time before he actually became leader, that I don't actually think he does have a lot of principles. I know you think he's a principled man, and obviously if you compare him to Farage, he is. Anybody is.
Yes.
But looking at all the flip-flops even occurred really before he kind of got elected. You know, he used to be in Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet, and he said he supported Jeremy Corbyn's policies. Now he doesn't support any of Jeremy Corbyn's policies. All of the stuff that everybody's gone through over and over, child benefit cap, welfare, winter fuel, that he's flip-flopped on, pandering to Trump and then not pandering to Trump. And my theory is it's because he's trying to play to two audiences. So yesterday I had a look. I wanted to see which members of the cabinet got donations from companies like private healthcare companies, gambling companies, things like that. And the only member of the cabinet that's ever been a member of the cabinet, because she's not now obviously, is Rayner, is the one that hasn't had donations from any of those companies that potentially have conflict of interest. So it's a fair point. Some people might roll their eyes at the frequency with which it's made, but they do not give money. Nobody gives money to any politician or political party without some expectation of something in return. Well, hardly. I mean, there are a few, I suppose, glorious examples of it, but hardly anyone does it, whether it's on the left or the right. Yeah, so clearly if he's getting money from various companies like that, he is working for them, whilst his backbenchers, I think, are more core Labour, old Labour values. They want to see their lives improve for their constituents, the majority of them do. And so there he is trying to basically pander to two completely conflicting wishes. And he cannot, so he's trying to keep everybody happy, and as a result, he's keeping absolutely no...
Who should he annoy?
He should annoy the big businesses.
Well, then our economy suffers.
I know. I mean, there's no perfect answer.
Then there'll be considerably less money for all the things you care about, and I care about.
Betting companies, though. Betting companies. I mean, they're a pariah on the working class. It just makes my stomach turn. But I don't have a perfect answer.
Well, nor does he. You see, and that to me, if you'd come at this from a slightly different angle, you could almost have been mounting a defence of him. But you're not. You're not. You're attacking him for not having a perfect answer to an imperfect world.
Yeah. I mean, I also have another theory about why he's so disliked.
Yeah, go on.
I mean, so, Biden was massively disliked, and there were reasons for that. He, and Trump doesn't get the same scrutiny for his mental health and his age, etc., etc. And I've got a theory that if you're Labour or Democrat, somehow the public does believe you stand for good.
Yes.
And even if you are a Republican yourself or a Tory or whatever, you still believe that somewhere inside that the Labour and the Democrats are supposed to be the party that's helping people.
Yes.
So when you see someone like Biden or Keir Starmer not helping people, you have much higher standards. So you hold them to much higher standards than you would, for example, Boris Johnson, who you expect to be corrupt, you expect to lie, etc. It's almost like he's a headmaster or a parent. People expect him to be that stable, good person. When he lets them down,
people on the right are desperate to prove that they're actually frauds and hypocrites, and people on the left are desperate to believe that they're not. And so that level of scrutiny ramps up accordingly from all corners and all angles, because that is how you end up hearing apparently sentient human beings trying to compare £5 million secret donations or £1 million public donations in Boris Johnson's case from the same man after he was Prime Minister. Christopher Harborne bunged Boris Johnson £1 million. No questions asked, and you see and hear people trying to compare that to sort of spectacles and suits, and it's not entirely without foundation, because Keir Starmer should have been turning down offers of free suits and spectacles, not just turning down offers, had they ever existed, of millions and millions of pounds in his private current account or for his, quotes, office, post-prime ministerial office, end quotes, which is where Boris Johnson was when he got his £1 million, while living in the back garden of the bloke that owns JCB. Anna's right. I hate that she's right, because it's not fair. You see it right across the media as well. You see people being held to much, much higher standards if they subscribe to decency publicly. Any evidence of tarnish or any evidence of bruises on their decency, their own moral compass, will be seized upon with an alacrity that barely applies to the people whose brand is immoral, to the people whose brand is greedy or racist or morally bankrupt. And I don't know what you can do about that. It would be nice, of course, if the media was a little bit more balanced, but it ain't. So it's all on Starmer for Anna, or at least most of it is. I'm not convinced, as I pointed out, unless you've got an answer to what he should have done differently, trying to ride two horses, because there are two horses for a Labour leader. You can't just say, right, we're looking after business and business will look after everybody else. If you're a Tory, you can pretend to believe in trickle-down economics. If you're Labour, you know that the relationship between taxation and the population is the single most important element of our democracy. If you're a Tory, you can kid yourself or truly believe, as everyone on Tufton Street seems to do, that just making the richest people in the world ever more richer will somehow be good for everybody else. John's in Fitzrovia. John, what would you like to say?
Well, really, first of all, I wanted to emphasise the fact that I was taught many, many, many years ago, British decline started in 1870 against its competitors, and we've been going downhill ever since.
What happened in 1870?
It was the day we dropped down the league table against our major competitors, such as the States and Russia.
Do we know why? Was it sort of the end of the Industrial Revolution?
Yeah, well, they were catching up, and they started to pass us.
Fair enough.
And they've been doing so ever since. And the empire bled us dry, effectively. We made less money out of the empire, at least as a nation, than it cost us to run it. And you see it all in that light. And then everything we see from then on, you normally have to look back 20 or 30 years to get some idea of the time frame and then project forwards to the kind of solutions. And because we don't live in China, where you have 10, 20, 30-year plans.
And the rest, yeah.
Starmer is
50,
trying to do
100.
this in 10 years, and that's a big ask.
Yeah.
In a society now that's media-driven, where they want to build up kind of crises, tensions and so on within... not during, within a 24-hour news cycle, or possibly less. And it places him in an almost impossible situation. And not only that, certain elements of the media, the usual suspects, are just going to come up with the same short critiques of him. It's going to be repeated.
No, but this is there's a bit chicken and egg, though. This is a little bit chicken and egg, because you cannot ignore what happened at the end of last week, and that may be partly a consequence of what you're describing, but the consequence becomes the story.
Yes.
I mean, it was a catastrophic set of results for Keir Starmer, and he has signally failed to do the one thing that everybody thought he was going to do, which is to stop the chaos, stop the internecine warfare, and stop the instability. Are you arguing, John, that no one could?
I think it's a big call for anybody.
I do too.
And all they can really do is effectively try and point at people and say, look the other way, while they're trying to sort of patch things up. And unfortunately, that doesn't progress us very far. And then you've had long-term events and so on, which, like Brexit back in 2016. We're 10 years on from that. But that was being effectively shaped by a number of forces, some outside this country, in order to effectively divide us, to get us out of Europe. And the damage has been done. The Russians were undermining our security services in the 20s, the 30s. People like Philby knew what was going on and were telling the Russians during the war. They were at the heart of SOE, MI5, and all the secrets were out before we got them.
Western stability is something that is traditionally despised only by Russian leaders. Now, it seems to be American leaders and some British politicians who've got a massive problem with it as well. So you can't let him off the hook entirely. Two great opening callers, actually, because you've sort of set out two opposing stalls. He has to bear somebody could surely have done a better job than he has.
I think, yes. I think the trouble is he's not a politician. He's not.
That's
Harold
what we
Wilson,
thought we wanted, isn't it?
And because of that, he plays a fairly plodding role and doesn't try and effectively maximise the ability to play people off against each other within his own structure very, very, very skillfully. And as a result of that, he's living with consequences of that. And unfortunately, I don't really see anybody coming up in the wings who's likely to get the better of that, with possible exceptions. But
I think
that's
why I find myself where I am today, in thinking that, I mean, it's not exactly a ringing endorsement or a magnificent vote of confidence to say I'm not convinced that things can't get worse. So let's just leave them as they are, which is pretty flipping awful. But how inevitable is this awfulness? What would a more successful cessation or attempt to stop the chaos, the instability, the internecine warfare have looked like? I mean, upsetting your core support seems to me to be a major misstep in the country, let alone in the Parliamentary Labour Party, the welfare cuts. But of course he argued, and I'll remind you what he said, that you could not fix things until you'd cleared out the rot. And that was his defence of some of the things that turned out to be incredibly unpopular, so much so that he had to reverse on them. 10:32 is the time. Phone lines are open. Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 10:36. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I love it when worlds collide. My very good friend Gary it's almost an inadequate description of the work that he does. But technically, he is a painter and decorator. For me, he's more of an artisan. And he was very, very struck by something I'd forgotten, for reasons that will become clear. Keir Starmer, when talking about his plans in the very early days, said, "Let me inject some hope. The whole point of this exercise is to make sure we can bring about the change that we need. If you don't clear out the rot and don't do it properly, you've got nothing to build on, and therefore this is a vital step. If you're redecorating your house and you want it to look much nicer, it's usually better if you strip it down, get rid of the damp and the cracks first, rather than painting it in 5 minutes, thinking it looks much better, and by Christmas the cracks and the damp come back." So this is actually a project of hope, but it's got to start with the hard yards of doing the difficult stuff, of clearing out the rot first. I forget specifically what he was referring to at that moment, but he was talking about the broader project. It came shortly after the announcement that winter fuel allowance payments would go only to pensioners who were in receipt of pension credit, and before he was compelled or felt forced to U-turn on that policy. But I don't think even his most ardent fans would currently argue that he is delivering on that work in process. What was stripping down the old decor? What was the damp he sought to get rid of, the cracks he sought to fill in? I don't even know. I mean, maybe reducing the welfare bill, but even that was stymied by his own backbenchers. So how much of Keir Starmer's perceived failure is down to Keir Starmer, and how much of it is down to the context, the country as he governs? It's 10:38. Mark's in Milton Keynes. Mark, what do you think?
I think you're right. I think if you're implying it's down to personal style, I think you're on the money.
I'm not. I'm genuinely not sure, because I find it hard to answer the question of who would do better.
It is a tricky question.
Yeah.
But in terms of Keir Starmer, I mean, he spoke the other day, and hope was his key message.
Again.
And anyone who works in business knows that hope is not a strategy. Look at his personal style, and in terms of politics. When he first came in, when Corbyn left and he was leader of the opposition, my personal perspective was, thank goodness, there's someone who's potentially credible on the world stage representing us.
Well, he's delivered on that bit of it, on the world stage, I would argue, actually.
He says the right things, but look, getting into his style, apparent that he has no convictions, okay?
Yes.
I suspect the man's never had an original idea in his life.
That's probably a bit harsh.
Okay, but
I take your point.
But that's what he conveys. I think, as the director of public prosecutions and as a barrister, probably in the top 1% of 1% of administrators in the world, not enough for politics.
Why not?
To stop the rot, he's got to be able to think on his feet. He's got to be able to make quick decisions. Whereas his profession has always been about referring to the textbook. Where's the legal statute? What should we do next? And barristers present and deliver messages. They parse every character, every comma in a piece of text.
I thought I wanted that. I thought I wanted that, Mark. I thought I wanted sort of no drama Starmer, sort of careful, plodding, dull, process-driven. I'm not convinced that it's a bad thing to want, actually. As long as you stick with the results of that process. That's what he's not. So I don't mind how you arrive at your conclusion. I'd much rather you arrived at your conclusion very, very carefully. But if you then abandon that carefully reached conclusion in a heartbeat, what's the flipping point of the process in the first place?
Can draw back upon business planning and business strategy. Most CEOs of major corporations will say, my job is to say no to good ideas because we set the strategy at the beginning of the year and we're delivering upon it. We're not changing tack every 5 minutes. No,
and so there's two. I mean, it's slightly contradictory what you're saying, because he has tried to do that, but then he has contradicted himself. So it's not a question of the absence of original ideas. I like the ploddingness, is what I'm saying, and a minute ago you didn't. So we can agree we'd probably rather have somebody very carefully arriving at a conclusion. But if they're not going to then stick with that conclusion, then everything is a waste of time. Everything is a mess, isn't it?
His plan was his manifesto. His direction was what he set out when he went in to become Prime Minister. And to take the country with him, he should have been delivering on what he said. Whether some of those decisions were deeply unpopular or not, but he should have said, this is why we're doing it, because this is where we're going. And that is that conviction that's missing, you see.
And sometimes the detail doesn't matter. A lot of conversation yesterday was about storytelling. They've delivered at least 20 of the manifesto pledges they made in 2024, getting rid of hereditary peers sitting in the House of Lords, abolishing the non-dom status, creating British Energy, Great British Energy, scrapping VAT exemptions for private schools, recognising the state of Palestine, which is an important one because an awful lot of people who profess to hate him because of the perception that he hasn't done enough in opposition to Israel's actions in Gaza and recognition of the Palestinian state. So there's a little bit of him that's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. But I'm with Mark on the simple question of process. I disagree with Mark about the kind of mercurial nature of leadership. I don't think that you necessarily want the same skill set in a Prime Minister that you might want in a CEO of a company that either employs you or in which you hold a lot of shares. I prefer a Prime Minister not to be off the cuff and not to be too mercurial. But if you're going to praise someone for their process, for their ploddingness, then the last thing they should be doing is changing their mind on a sixpence. The last thing. So talk of U-turns, whether they are technically U-turns or exercises in listening or that misquote or that thing that John Maynard Keynes apparently never said about when the facts change, sir, I change my mind, what do you do? All of that works. All of that works, but not if the thing he was supposed to deliver was carefulness. You can't be carefulness and mind-changing. Not on this level. The one cancels that. This is important. That's a great contribution from Mark. It's clarifying things for me, and that is on him. That's not down to the context in which he finds himself. Should he have styled it out? Should he have told his own backbenchers to do one? Should he have essentially flicked the bird at all the people complaining about the winter fuel allowance and stayed with it? Answer, yes, but 2020 hindsight is a wonderful thing. Do we have any sound effects, Keith? That's a horse-drawn carriage. Horse-drawn carriage alert! I'll do my own sound effects, seeing as I never get any production. If Emily Maitlis asked for a horse-drawn carriage alert, she'd probably have a full train of horses in the studio by 11 o'clock this morning. She'd probably ride in on one. She'd probably ride... If Emily Maitlis wanted a sound effect on her newsagent's podcast for the horse-drawn carriage alert that I'm now issuing in a very amateurish and lonely fashion, she'd probably be given an actual horse by the management in this building. But here I am doing a horse-drawn carriage alert. Trumpet alert. Trumpet alert. The trumpets are now playing. I think it's Knees Up Mother Brown. Is it Knees Up Mother Brown? No, it's not. Hang on, bear with me. Is it the Bryan Adams one from the Robin Hood film? No. That is the king in his golden carriage, making his way. No, it's not. Who is it then? That's just a crown in a carriage. That's the imperial state crown in a carriage. Also the sword of state. The sword of state. And the imperial state crown making their way to Parliament in their own carriages. Drawn by horses and accompanied by the plaintive wail of trumpets. Or possibly cornets. All those really long, thin ones that I don't know the name of. At least I'm honest. Everybody else pretends they know what everything is and what's going on. Is it a bugle? Am I talking about? No, a bugle's smaller. A bugle is like a small trumpet without any pushy buttons on it. I think. I don't know anything really. But here we are, marking the moment with the requisite solemnity and seriousness. Definitely not trying desperately to think of things that rhyme. More on that after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:48 is the time. My thanks to Patrick, who has informed us that the long, thin trumpet is in fact called a strumpet. So it was the plaintive wail of the strumpet that accompanied the passage of the sword of state and the imperial crown of state up the mall. Always sounds a little bit indecent to me, but that is where they are and what they're doing. Listen, I'm not making this up. Here it is live. Who's that sniffing? That wasn't me, by the way. Just so you know. Was that you, Keith? Have you invaded the feed? Sounded a little bit like Velcro there. Just a little bit of background noise from the crowd. We are having a radio phone-in about the state of British politics, but it's interesting how many people think that things like this, moments like this, sum up the state of Britain. Here's a couple of examples in the same moment. Alex writes, "It sounds beautiful though, James, even if it is ridiculous." And Chris, in the same moment, wrote, "Hi, James, this nonsense is everything that's wrong with the UK. I just thought I would mention it." Well, I'm glad you did, Chris, because somebody has to. As I get older, I quite like it, but I wouldn't read too much into that if I were you. And Tim's been in touch to say, please ask James to define internecine. Well, I'm happy to. Internecine is tribal warfare, internecine warfare. It comes from the Latin. I'm not actually making this up. I'll be making up most of the things that I share with you in the course of the pageantry building up to the King's speech. For example, it's not really called a strumpet, but I'm going to pretend that I believe that because my inbox gets interest. People will tune in and say, why on earth is O'Brien calling it a strumpet? I never listened to this show. I've just tuned in by accident. Is he still going on about Brexit and strumpets? I am not making this up. Necus, Necus, is the Latin word for tribe. And from Necus comes Nicine, Necine. So inter-Nicine means within the tribe, not intra-Nicine, which would be tribes against each other, but inter-Nicine becomes tribal warfare. So family warfare, the family fighting each other. Which brings us, of course, to James I, who was king in 1605 when the gunpowder plot was discovered, which is why at this moment the yeomen of the guard, otherwise known I think as beefeaters, although I could have got that wrong, will be conducting or have recently concluded a ceremonial search of the cellars of the Palace of Westminster for explosives. A little nod there to that gunpowder plot of 1605 in which a group of English Catholics failed to blow up the House of Lords and kill the Protestant king. And a shout, not that it's worth it because they'll all be in the exam hall now, so a shout to the parents of the young people who have started their A-levels today. Because if you're doing A-level English and King Lear was one of your set texts, you'll probably be nodding towards King James and some of the coded references in King Lear to King James's reign. But good luck to all the kids who are in there, but also to the parents who are dealing with it. 10:51 is the time. How much of the mess in which Keir Starmer finds himself is Keir Starmer's fault? Answer so far, quite a lot. And yes, the media is feral. And yes, we are all addicted to psychodrama. And yes, we use the word psychodrama far too much in political coverage. And yes, we are part of the problem by talking about it. But yes, the election results at the end of last week mean that most of this is justified. Okay? So how much of it is on him? How much of the failure to stop the drama is down to Keir Starmer, who's not a farmer, and this isn't karma? John's in Stafford. John, what would you like to say?
Well, firstly, I think you've just out Dimbleby.
Thank you very much, John. I am available for all such engagements and assignments.
And we now know where the strumpet comes from.
Yes,
so
yes, indeed.
That would have been a question for tomorrow.
A fascinating moment of British pageantry, I felt.
I think with regards to Keir Starmer, I think the writing was on the wall from the moment of the donkey sanctuary.
Yeah, okay.
And they're having to dig so deep to try and find something to criticise and critique him over, that then moving into government, and virtually the first thing he has to deal with is the Farage riots.
Yes.
And he dealt with it very sternly and very efficiently, using the laws of the land, as you would expect somebody of his standing within the legal profession to do so.
Yeah, that's true.
That rubbed up a lot of people of the other persuasion, of the right, in completely the wrong way. And then we start getting the bombast about no free speech in the UK and two-tier Keir. And whereas you have somebody from his profession who is prepared has to listen to argument and make decisions based on those arguments, if the arguments coming into him are not all correct and are various persuasions, he's then got to make a choice of who do I go with. At a major incident, an incident commander will have heads from each section of that.
Of course.
And they will come to him with the facts, and he will need to make a decision about that incident and how it's going to go forward. Things will always change, and in this world, at this moment in time, things that are changing around us on a daily, on a minute-by-minute basis, especially with what's gone on across the Atlantic.
Yes.
He showed his true colours, and he showed his determination not to be drawn into something that was going against Leveson. It was going against everything that we didn't want to see, or whereas, I'm going to put quite the right way around, whereas certain tribal elements within our politics would have had those body bags coming back.
He's got that absolutely right. And anybody saying otherwise would be on Donald Trump's side during a conversation maligning our war dead from Afghanistan, which, of course, Donald Trump did without receiving a single syllable of criticism from the usual suspects. But I'm thinking about incident commanders. Once they've made a decision, and in the absence of anything changing, to then change your mind is catastrophic. So I'm thinking about winter fuel payments or even welfare cuts, whatever you might personally think about them. He made a decision and then he backtracked on that decision, which is the worst of all imaginable worlds.
It is, but
from a leadership perspective, because you can do he realised he'd made a mistake, so he changed course, defence, which is valid, but from a leadership perspective, it's disastrous.
But you need to have a leader who's prepared to listen and who is not afraid. But like you said, you listen before you make the announcement, and then you hope that the hope word is obviously quite relevant. That everything goes in the way that it would do or should do based on the current information that you've got. But other things then interject and change the course of events. And, OK, let's try and keep Trump on side. We got the lowest tariffs.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of good that did us in the long run, but it was the right thing to do at the time. Absolutely,
but of course,
categorically.
Those tariffs have now been overturned, so there are going to be refunds, and most of those people that were affected by them, well, they've got the legal cases in ready to see what happens with that. Even as far as the Mandelson appointment, you have the likes of Dan Rhodes, just saying how wonderful.
Everyone thought it was wonderful.
What a good pragmatic move it was. Yeah. Until of course it wasn't.
No, and now it gets dredged up by people who were cheering it from the rafters as proof of what a wrong 'un Keir Starmer is, which is again evidence of epic hypocrisy. And Labour leaders and Zach Polanski is being held to a much higher account at the moment than Nigel Farage, for example. Despite both of them having questions to answer, Farage's question's much bigger than Polanski's. They should both be held to at least equal and opposite accounts. Starmer will be held to a much higher account than anybody, and never more so than when people who decided that the appointment of Peter Mandelson was a stroke of political genius are now absolutely convinced that they knew all along, and it proved beyond any reasonable doubt that Starmer was an idiot for putting Mandelson in that role in the first place. But you're giving him too much credit. I mean, you must hold him responsible for some of the mess that he finds himself in.
Well, at the end of the day, that well-worn phrase, there has to be a certain level of responsibility. He's going to have to do that. But if he can hold his hands up and say, mea culpa, okay, yes, it was the wrong decision, but this is what we're going to do to resolve it. And that's what you want, is that it just doesn't hold his hands up and say, OK, well, I haven't got a clue. Who's going to do what? There should be a plan put in place. And with the processes that he's had to deal with, i.e. over the Mandelson and the necessary investigations that were done re Mandelson, and the fact that he didn't get to know about it, and all of these areas of government that have clearly been going on from the year dot, or somebody put them in place, are going to have to be revisited and redone so that we don't have these kind of
and we're back to Gary. We're back to Gary and his fond memory of the decorating analogy and the importance of getting everything ready before you start redecorating. And I suppose Starmer's defence would be that we're still in the business of filling the cracks and stripping down the old decor. But of course, that puts enormous pressure on whatever it is that they do next. John, what a great call! What wonderful calls today. And we'll carry on with this, I suspect, until the King starts talking. Time now for an update. Someone just sneezed. I felt a very patriotic sneeze, though. Very patriotic sneeze. Regal, almost. The King, I think, is still in bed. Or he's having a crafty fag round the back of the palace before the carriage turns up. Someone just coughed. What you've got now is the yeoman of the guard lining the... That's Westminster Hall, right? I haven't got my glasses on. That was a mistake. That's something David Dimbleby would never forget his glasses at the moment. I've got sunglasses. Would that look ridiculous? But they've got a prescription lens in them, so I can probably see. Oh, now the picture's changed. No, there's benches there, so that's the House of Lords, is it? Did you just see Lord Timpson? We like him. Yeah, we like him. He's been on full disclosure. They're all waiting now, patiently, in the House of Lords, not for the King, who's not actually left the palace yet. They're waiting for the crown, which is being carried to the robing room on a special cushion. It's a technical term. You should see the training manual for this. That clinking you can hear is the guards' swords. Correct term, I believe, is clinkifying on the steps of the steps of the the staircase. The steps of the staircase. The steps of the staircase. The crown. Do we know where the Sword of State is at the moment? Is the Sword of State all right? Is the Sword of State with the crown? No. No word yet on the Sword of State. So they're all crammed into the House of Lords. I believe the Sword of State is just behind. No. Where have the fellas gone with the sort of ostrich feathers on their heads? They accompany it just to the main door, do they? At some point, Black Rod hits a door. I don't think anyone's actually gone missing. I think this is all as scheduled and as planned. But I don't know what happened to the blokes with the really... What's the word I want? Frou-frou. The really frou-frou hats. Oh, hang on. They're coming. Here's the sword. Everyone relax. The sword is safe. The Sword of State is safe. And here it comes. I tell you what, you think I'm bad? You should see the subtitles accompanying the BBC's coverage. A dancer and wearing this kind of garb, and sometimes we did, was a matter of hairpins, sort of extraordinary, even just to keep the wigs on. Yeah, so you should count your lucky stars that you got my coverage, not these people at the BBC who actually know what they're talking about. We cross live now to Buckingham Palace, which sits, of course, in the City of London. Not the City of London with a capital C, but the City of London with a small c. The City of London. Renowned throughout the world because it's where Shakira law is practiced by the residents. The King has now left the palace in his golden carriage with the very big wheels. How many carriages does the King have, I wonder? But he can only use one at a time. As that great sage of our era, J.K. of Jamiroquai, once observed when he was criticised for simultaneously being an environmental campaigner and the owner of several high-performance sports cars, he responded winningly, "But I can only drive one at a time, so what's the problem?" So it is with the King's carriages. Does it matter how many he has? He can only occupy one at a time. Members of the Household Cavalry Mounted Regiment now escorting the King from Buckingham Palace to the Houses of Parliament. To the Houses of Parliament. One of Queen Victoria's favourite carriages, that one, by the way. I just read that on the screen. I don't know if it's true. And how will we ever find out? Who is here to contradict us, given that Queen Victoria is sadly no longer with us? And hasn't been for about 128 years, give or take. Check Wikipedia. Note to self. Would you like some news? Do you feel it would be appropriate to interrupt this moment of epic solemnity and regal significance? Yes, I think it would be. Here comes the news.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 7 minutes after 11 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where, as you heard in the news bulletin, we will be taking the King's speech live shortly around or shortly after 11:30 this morning. I imagine Natasha will be joining me just before that to set the scene. I mean, it is the legislative programme for the next Parliament, so there could be a couple of rabbits being pulled out of the policy hat. I don't know. Goodness knows Keir Starmer at the moment needs all the help he can get. And he didn't really announce anything substantive in the speech on Monday morning that was widely regarded as a sort of career-saving intervention. And it didn't work because his career hasn't been saved. He might still be Prime Minister, but we're still talking about how long that situation will sustain. And that leads us to the question we've been asking this morning, which is how much of this mess is his fault? And how much is just evidence of Brexit Britain but no longer being a serious country? To be fair, the signs have been there for ages. A country in which Jacob Rees-Mogg could be taken seriously. Before Brexit, nobody would take Jacob Rees-Mogg seriously, except possibly Jacob Rees-Mogg. And I'm not even sure that's true, to be honest with you. I don't think Jacob Rees-Mogg took himself seriously until Brexit came along. And we started, for reasons that I've chronicled tirelessly, treating people who didn't know what they were talking about as equal and opposite equivalents to people who knew what they were talking about. And we're still there now. Starmer, someone who knew what he was talking about, was supposed to stop the madness, or at least some of it, and he hasn't. Is that his fault? Is it because he lacks a very particular set of skills? Or was it an inevitable consequence of the broader context? For the record, if you're just tuning in, I think a lot of it is on him. And my callers so far have been divided with a preponderance leaning towards he couldn't really have done things very differently, which I do disagree with. Wayne is in Kingsbridge in Devon. Wayne, what would you like to say?
I think that you're probably right on both counts. It's a combination of the two, isn't it? He's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. We live in a world now where we can scroll our finger from the bottom of our phone upwards and get the next bit of dopamine hit. It's instant. We can order online. We can get the stuff delivered straight away the next day, in some cases within an hour. We are impatient people now. But he inherited a country where essentially everything was just knocked down to its bare bones. If you take the house analogy, he inherited blank, empty trenches where foundations should be. And he's now supposedly have built those foundations up.
Yes.
And now he's got to do the big job of actually building something on top of those foundations.
Yes.
But he doesn't have the luxury of doing it in quick time.
No. That's a really interesting analysis, because it hinges on the question, doesn't it, which I can't answer, of whether or not he thinks he is doing a good job of getting those foundations in place, because they're invisible. To take the analogy to Breaking Point, Wayne, you can't see the foundations, so you can't be sure they're there until the big bad wolf comes along and starts huffing and puffing.
Exactly, which is difficult. So he has to now prove that he can get his hands involved, that he can micromanage for a while, which, you know, it's been claimed by many people that he is quite hands-off in his management style and lets his ministers and secretaries of state get on with their job as intended. But he's got a manifesto to deliver, and he doesn't have enough time to do that delivery if he's not careful. And if he has indeed seen off this challenge to his leadership, now is the time where he needs to prove that he is a passionate man, that he can deliver stuff. That stuff's been trained out of him. Barristers do not show huge amounts of passion. That they show facts in front of them, and that is that.
Well, some do. So no, that's not true. I mean, it's the only hole I'm going to pick in your analysis so far. But some barristers are very theatrical. I went to see Paul Dacre giving evidence in the latest phone hacking trial, and the barrister who is leading on that is a very theatrical character. David Sherborne, I think his name is. It was a pleasure to watch. It was like being at the theatre, albeit that I don't know what I'm allowed to say legally about. Yeah, I was in the public gallery. Paul Dacre just sat there looking very cowed and small, but the barrister was. But anyway, I digress. I mean, some barristers are very, what's the word I want? Flamboyant. Wait,
okay,
flamboyant.
So perhaps I've worded it a little bit wrong.
Yeah, sorry.
He deals in facts and facts only.
Yes.
And presents the facts only, and sometimes the feelings can get removed when all you're focusing on is the facts.
Yeah, I guess.
And meanwhile, his opponents and the likes of Farage and Polanski, that they all have this way of delivering that excites people one way or another. And we don't get that from Keir. And we don't necessarily need it, but we need to feel like progress is being made at a pace that is what we need.
Yeah, and then the personal crashes headlong into the political, because 15 years ago we didn't need it. We didn't need our politics when David Cameron and Gordon Brown were was it David Cameron and Gordon Brown to start with? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? When one was Prime Minister and one was leader of the opposition. There was no love lost between them, but there was no need for dopamine hits or warfare or any of those things. The world felt very different because they were on opposing teams that all agreed what the rules were.
But the rules have changed.
The rules have blown up, mate. The rules have gone.
The Overton window has moved drastically.
Very much.
William Pitt the Younger, his world is totally different to what Boris Johnson and Thatcher had. So we have to move with the times, and politicians need to move somewhat with it and present in a way that is palatable. I see so many people on my social media, particularly on Facebook, calling for him to go. But they're getting the hit from getting angry about something, and they don't really know what they're getting angry about.
And they don't know why they want him to go particularly, or what will be better if he does. It's just get rid of him, yeah. And also, I think social media, and I obviously am a slightly weird person on this front because I've got this job and I don't need the kick of social media to sort of validate myself. But I would if I didn't have this job, and it validates everybody. You know, you can post absolute jibber-jabber on there and get 10 million likes and feel that you're the most brilliant commentator. Some of the stuff I've read over the years about myself, never mind other people, that is so utterly devoid of reality, so utterly removed from reality. But if you get 10,000 likes for it, or even, look, if your life is a little, if you get 10 likes for it, it's more than you've ever got before. 10 likes I got for slagging off James O'Brien. 10 likes I got for slagging off Keith on Twitter. That's incredible. I'm going to do a lot more of that. I'm going to, oh, well, that lie, and everyone feels like they matter now. And in a way, that should be a good thing. But if people like Elon Musk are rewarding you for lying or for being racist or for being bigoted, then it's obviously not a good thing at all. And I mention that because Wayne leads us into the contemplation of why Keir Starmer is personally so incredibly unpopular. And I think a lot of that has to come from social media. But for me, the best illustration of it comes via Israel, actually, because Keir Starmer is hated by the left for being what they describe as complicit in genocide. And yet he is hated by defenders of Israel's genocide for standing up to it. That is an almost impossible situation for a politician to have found themselves in. There was a march of solidarity for Jewish people in Britain at the weekend, and a lot of the coverage, and again, I don't know whether the coverage was fair, but a lot of the coverage suggested that a huge amount of energy was expended on hating Keir Starmer, on chanting or shouting dislike for, disapproval of, hatred of Keir Starmer. And yet, of course, on the left of British politics, he is, quotes, hated, end quotes, because he has been complicit in the genocide for the people on that side of the fence. So normally I like centrism. It's the politics of compromise. It's the politics of the possible as opposed to the impossible. But sometimes when you find yourself in the centre of a situation, getting abuse from that side and for that side, while they are in complete disagreement with each other, you don't know how much of that is on the person caught in the crossfire from both sides and how much of it is a consequence of the context in which he finds himself. And that's the question that we're asking today. How many of Keir Starmer's problems are Keir Starmer's fault, and how much of the situation in which he finds himself in is down to the situation in which he finds himself in? And you won't find a better example than that. 0345 60 60973 is the number if you want to join in. Let's just have a quick listen to the carriage. That's the House of Lords, where they await the King. Do we have a feed of the... Oh, that's a strumpet. King and Queen are now arriving. That is, I just called to say I love you by Stevie Wonder. No, hang on, it'll come to me. It's the Firestarter by the Prodigy, I think. Yeah, it was Firestarter by the Prodigy being played on the strumpet. That has been a tradition now since about 1991. Prior to that, the strumpet would play My Old Man's a Dustman. He wears a dustman's hat. He took me round the corner to watch a football match. The King is now exiting the carriage. Obviously ladies first. So here comes the Queen. Resplendent. That's all, just resplendent. In a lovely crown. Oh, that is a nice crown. And here comes the King, who's put a shift in lately. I know it's relative, and you'd happily swap places with him in many ways. But here he is, putting in another shift. Queen glides, I would say, glides effortlessly to his side. David Lammy is wearing a wig and leading the procession up the stairs. Going to take a little break, I think, and then return to proceedings imminently. It's 11:18.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 19 minutes after 11. I think I got my intros and my intros mixed up. I do apologise. I was sounding so clever as well when I was answering the question about what internecine warfare is and drawing on me Latin, which I haven't studied since 1988, but some of it sticks. And I got all of that bit right, but I think inter is one tribe against another, and intra is when it's within the same tribe. So when you're talking about the Labour Party tearing itself to shreds, it could be both, couldn't it? It could be internecine warfare because they are different tribes within the same party, or it could be intra-necine warfare because they are technically within the same tribe and or party. But I think I prefer internecine warfare because it's tribes within the Labour Party, but I explained that wrong a moment ago. I may have some very significant breaking news for you in the next couple of minutes. So as I introduce Kai in Hornsey to the programme, I caution him that he may be interrupted with that breaking news, or indeed with a particularly gusting blast of the strumpet. Kai, what would you like to say?
Wow, we're on tenterhooks then for this call.
Yeah, see what I do? It's like
James.
I've done this before, mate. I'm building up a little bit. It'll probably go out like a burst balloon. But anyway, here we are.
James, can I just say that going up the steps of the staircase is peak O'Brien commentary. That's, John Watson, eat your heart out.
Thank you very much. Yes, I've been on a course.
I'm in Hornsey, so obviously I'm at ground zero of Catherine West's specific omni-shambles of this political week. I basically wanted to just call in. It was something quite simple, and I mean, it's been mentioned before, and you've had so many callers that have spoken about personality politics.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that we're living, unfortunately, regrettably, at the moment, in the age of the strong man in the UK, in the US, in so much of Western politics. And Keir Starmer is just seen as weak. And the problem is that when you're seen as weak, your message, whatever your message is, isn't going to cut through. And he doesn't really have many messages that cut through anyway. And I think the problem is that people see being a strong man or being a strong person, a strong character as something that has to be inherently conservative or right-wing. And that's because most strong people that we've seen in the last decade, be it Trump or Farage or even Boris Johnson, have been
But none of them are strong. I mean, I know that you're using the phrase as a figure of speech, but they are. Yes. That's a sort of cavalcade of pathetic children that you've just described there.
That's true.
Thin
Absolutely.
Skin, and they pretend to be. I mean, it's populism that you're describing.
Absolutely. But I think it's people are equating the how specific and how targeted their messaging is with having a strong message.
Well, this is why the question is whether or not Keir Starmer could do anything differently, because he's never going to become a populist.
No,
he's never going to become a racist liar. He's never going to become a climate change denier or a misogynist. He's flirted with some of the right-wing positions, and it's made everything worse, not better. So when you look at the mess he's currently in, is it a consequence of context or a consequence of character?
Well, I think the thing is, I mean, I'm not a fan of Jeremy Corbyn. I'm a Labour member. I mean, I've never been a fan of Corbyn, but I would put Corbyn in the same bracket in terms of the strengths of character and the strength of his message. Now, the thing is, with all of these characters, whether you want to look at...
But he was also, I mean, he's also susceptible to accusations of populism.
Absolutely, indeed. But I think the key thing is, as soon as you have someone that has sort of strength of message, they seem to garner respect.
Strength of message versus strength of character. That's interesting, because, I mean, you use the word weak to describe Keir Starmer. I don't think he is. As we've seen over Iran more than anything else, but it is about perceptions, isn't it? It's not about policies or people. Sometimes it's about perceptions. Natasha Clark is here with, and you know, I know I'm being a little bit facetious and flippant today with regards to the King's speech in Parliament, but this is a very serious moment potentially.
Yes, potentially, James. So we've just had, in the last few minutes, some news from allies of Wes Streeting. According to the Times newspaper, he's told allies, which we think are MPs, that he is preparing to resign and trigger a leadership contest as soon as tomorrow. So we've been discussing here on LBC for the last sort of 24 hours about whether this day of the King's speech had meant that all politicians would be putting aside their differences and putting aside everything, sort of this Westminster speculation about Keir Starmer's future to one side for the day. But it seems like that's not the case, isn't it? We had that meeting earlier between the Prime Minister and Wes Streeting. We know he
was notably short. It had a distinct air of Streeting being told to sling his hook, I felt.
I think probably fair. That's probably fair. And like I say, we haven't had a readout from from number 10. We don't know from Wes Streeting's side either what was said between the pair, but what we do know is what he was preparing to say ahead of time. We know they were planning to have a leadership conversation. We know that Wes Streeting had tried to do that after Cabinet and was told, sorry guys, come back later. And it's clear that he hasn't been happy, at least according to these reports, because of what he has heard. That he was in number 10 for just 16 minutes this morning. So incredibly rapid meeting. We should say that obviously, the Prime Minister's a busy man. It's probably not unusual that he has 10-minute meetings. But
King's speech today as well.
Exactly, he's got enough on.
It's a blank day in the diary, but this would appear, and this is from, is it Stephen Swinford at the time?
Yeah, it's from Aubrey Allegretti and Patrick Maguire at the Times.
Okay.
So, and I have...
Very, very well connected journalist.
Exactly, and so we have heard that they're, and I have, to be fair, having conversations with MPs that are close to Wes Streeting, so some of his allies, and so I've put this to them, not sort of had that response yet.
Okay.
But one Streeting ally who's spoken to the Times says he is going to go for it. He is going tomorrow. So it could be that we are in for a 24-hour truce, and then all hell might break loose tomorrow.
Does he fight?
He's going to fight. I absolutely am confident that the Prime Minister is absolutely going to fight.
So it could end up making everything worse in a way. Well, or not. I mean, who knows at times like this, really.
And his allies were quite confident last night that he doesn't have the numbers, because we've obviously seen around 90 MPs come out and call for the Prime Minister to go. We don't imagine that all of them will be supporters of Wes Streeting, but there's quite a lot of MPs we haven't heard from, isn't there? We've had 100 on one side, 100 on the other side. Well, that does leave the other 200, and we don't know exactly what they think.
Is it feasible for Streeting, given that the membership of the Labour Party reputedly holds him in quite low regard? He's seen very much as a figure of the right of the party, or the membership leans partly as a consequence of Jeremy Corbyn's period in charge of the party and the number of people that joined them. But historically, it leans a lot further to the left than Wes Streeting is seen as doing. Is it? Because he wouldn't be allowed. Would he be allowed a clear path?
I don't think he will be allowed a clear path.
I don't mean by Keir Starmer. I mean by other
members.
candidates. Because if he's the only one against Keir Starmer, he's got a much better chance than if other hats start heading ringwards.
Well, what we've heard in terms of from Angela Rayner and in terms of sort of other MPs, including, there was a report as well in the press in the last 24 hours saying that Ed Miliband could be prepared to stand as the soft left candidate. Angela Rayner has also made it clear that if Wes Streeting goes, she's going to go too. They don't want someone from that wing of the party, and like you say, he is seen as being too right-wing for the Labour Party. So
75% certain this story's kosher. I mean, it could be that that they are being told this, but that Streeting hasn't actually inked it yet, and will change his mind. But I mean, they wouldn't have gone public. I know those two journalists, and they wouldn't have gone public with this unless they were dead certain of their...
Yeah, like I say, it sounds like an MP that's spoken to the paper who says that he is going to do so. But equally, I mean, look, he's been weighing this up for a long time. This would, if this is true, this is a huge change in position for him, because Wes Streeting has repeatedly said, and I was speaking to MPs and allies of his yesterday that said, we're not going to pull that trigger. We don't want to do that. So...
we're dropping the news largely because Natasha has just brought you the biggest political story of the moment, but mostly, but also, of course, because the King is now making his way through the House of Lords, accompanied by his wife, the Queen. Is it Bring Your Wife to Work Day today, or is that just for him? Is it? No, just for him. And page boys, various page boys, and some of these outfits are absolutely magnificent. They're a little bit sort of late era Michael Jackson, aren't they? An awful lot of jewellery. Brocade is a wonderful word that you don't really hear very often except on days like today. And epaulettes. I don't know that I've ever worn an epaulette, but I aspire to one day wearing epaulettes. Epaulettes and brocade, not to mention crowns. 2 crowns, one for the King, the other, of course, for the Queen. Everyone's looking very serious. Where do they find the little boys? Do we know? You boy! What day is it? Well, it's King's Speech Day, sir. I don't know where they find the little boys, but and he's making his way to the big old chair where he will sit down and deliver the King's speech. Oh, it's pomp and ceremony. No one else in the world does it like this, but if someone started doing it like this, we'd think they would start staring mad. And Donald Trump probably watches this and wonders why he's not allowed to have this kind of event or this kind. Why can't I have a crown? Why can't I have ermine? Why can't I have epaulettes and lots of medals? But it would be very, very odd if this were to be sort of instituted from a standing start. And now the assembled throngs of politicians from both houses rise to their feet as the king makes his way into the chamber, led by a nice-looking fella carrying a very large pole. Here he is. This is oddly a feed from the House of Commons now, but the king is, of course, in the House of Lords. But I suppose it's closer than I am, so we may as well listen to that for a moment or two. The king is now sitting down, as is the Queen. The mysterious page boys. I bet David Dimbleby would know where they came from. Where is David Dimbleby when you need him? And I think they usually say some prayers. I think they say the prayers before he sits down. I could be wrong. That's a whopping old train, though, he's got. It's like a big, long ermine and velvet, like what a bride would have, rolling out from behind the king's robes. Now waiting for the signal there, given by the Lord Great Chamberlain. It's a good title. That's a signal to Black Rod. There it comes. We will now head to the House of Commons. This is the bit I could remember, where you get to see the body language. It's not impossible that Kemi Badenoch will do a lap of honour at this point round the entire Houses of Parliament while shouting, "I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm Kemi Badenoch, I'm the best." Although tradition dictates that she will walk somberly alongside the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who, as Natasha has just told us, may not be having a good day. That's the sound of Black Rod banging the door. Little chuckle there, someone listening to this coverage with a surreptitiously placed earpiece. And the door opens, doors plural. Black Rod makes his way into the House of Commons.
This noble House, King commands to attend His Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
The King commands is what he is saying. I don't know how we've managed to lose the feed there. The King commands this noble house to attend His Majesty immediately. Oh, you heard that in the House of Peers. I think some of the pictures are running a tiny little bit ahead of some of the audio, and now is the moment where all of the MPs get to their feet and make their way to the House of Lords. The door being slammed in the face of Black Rod is a mark of the independence of the House of Commons. Something that I presume goes back to Charles I, or at least Charles II, of course. And they're off. The MPs now making their way in a sort of slightly higgledy-piggledy fashion from the House of Commons towards the House of Lords. Just trying to see the key players, if I can. There's an awful lot of lavishly clad attendants in place. There they are. Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer chatting away quite amiably. Diane Abbott immediately behind Keir Starmer because she is, of course, the mother of the house. And I told you I wouldn't recognise faces. Who's the old? Is that Edward Lee? Edward Lee? Is it? God, well done me. That was Edward Lee, the father of the house, which just means they're the oldest. Or is it the oldest or the longest serving? Longest serving. Lady and man, woman and man, mother and father. Yeah, well, I don't want to read too much into this, but Kemi Badenoch was chatting away there. Keir Starmer didn't look riveted, but he has quite possibly got an awful lot on his mind at the moment, i.e. a leadership challenge incoming from Wes Streeting, as our political editor Natasha Clark shared with us just a moment ago. And we are going to take the speech in its entirety. I won't interrupt it. I don't think that would be appropriate. What is the likelihood of there being, Natasha, major pronouncements in this speech, like major movements, major moments, stuff that perhaps some people were waiting for on Monday morning but didn't materialise?
Yeah, I mean, from what we understand of it and what the government has told us overnight is going to be in it, I don't think this is going to be a groundbreaking King speech. I don't think it's going to say a lot more that we didn't already know was going to be in it. Reform to the NHS, police reform, immigration reforms, already set out by the government in many ways. I'm sure there will be something in it that's a little bit new. Keir Starmer gave us a flavour, didn't he? He said it was going to be the nationalisation of British Steel bill, which was going to be coming as part of this King's Speech. But 35 bills is nothing to be sniffed. That's quite a lot of legislation to try to get passed. Of course, they've got as well lots of other things they didn't manage to finish as well in the last session. Things like the Hillsborough Law, for example, that managed not to get on the statute book. So there's a lot of things that this government keeps saying that it wants to do. But I don't think there's going to be any major surprises, I don't think, in there. One of the things that I was being told was being drawn up was as a bill specifically about Europe and closer alignment with Europe. I think we will probably expect to see something there. But whether it will be ripping up the Labour Party's red lines on the single market and customs
union, it doesn't really matter anyway, because they can pronounce anything they want, really, on Europe. It's up to Europe what we can and can't get now. So
true, that's absolutely true. But it would be, I think it would be a sign, and I think there were some Labour MPs over the weekend saying, something really bold, like saying, like Sadiq Khan has said, let's go back into the EU, might be enough to shift Labour's fortunes.
David Lammy, and some people will find this a little bit hard to swallow. David Lammy down on one knee there in front of the King, handing over the speech, and here it comes.
Members of the House of Commons. An increasingly dangerous and volatile world threatens the United Kingdom, with the conflict in the Middle East only the most recent example. Every element of the nation's energy, defence and economic security will be tested. My government will respond to this world with strength and aim to create a country that is fair for all. My ministers will take decisions that protect the energy, defence and economic security of the United Kingdom for the long term. They will defend the British values of decency, tolerance and respect for difference under our common flag. And they will harness the potential of the pride felt across this country for its communities. My government will take urgent action to tackle anti-Semitism and ensure all communities feel safe. My government believes that the United Kingdom's economic security depends on raising living standards in every part of the United Kingdom. My ministers will support measures that maintain stability and control the cost of living. They will use public investment to shape markets and attract further private investment. They will deploy the power of an active state in partnership with business and enable reforms that support higher growth and a fair deal for working people. My government believes that improved trading relations are vital for the United Kingdom's economic security, for significantly raising economic growth and for lowering prices for working people. My ministers will introduce legislation to take advantage of new trading opportunities, including a bill to strengthen ties with the European Union. My government will also support the economic security of British businesses. Legislation will be introduced to tackle late payments and to reduce the burden of unnecessary regulation through innovation. The United Kingdom's economic security depends upon world-class infrastructure. Legislation will be introduced to unlock the benefits of airport expansion, enable roads to be built at pace, including the Lower Thames crossing, and deliver a fair deal for the north of England through Northern Powerhouse Rail. My ministers will continue to take all action necessary to safeguard the domestic production of steel. My government will also improve the United Kingdom's security by continuing to invest in the renewal of public services. My ministers will push forward with significant reforms to the police, the National Health Service, and to the criminal justice system to help them deliver services the British people expect. Legislation will be introduced to increase confidence in the security of the immigration and asylum systems. My government will improve critical infrastructure with legislation to clean up the water industry and establish Great British Railways. My government believes that the United Kingdom should be a country fair for all and a place where every child is included in the nation's highest aspirations. My ministers believe that every child deserves the chance to succeed to the best of his or her ability and not be held back due to poverty, special educational needs, or a lack of respect for vocational education. My ministers will continue to invest in apprenticeships and measures that tackle youth unemployment. They will respond to the Milburn Review and the Timms Review and continue to reform the welfare system to support both young and disabled people to flourish in work as the basis for long-term economic security. A bill will be brought forward to raise standards in schools and introduce generational reforms of the special educational needs system. My ministers will also proceed with the introduction of digital ID that will modernize how citizens interact with public services. Alongside strong public services and a strong economy, the highest standards of trust in public office are essential for the social contract and the United Kingdom's collective security. My government will introduce the Hillsborough Law to bring forward a duty of candour for public servants. My ministers will also introduce legislation to enable peerages to be removed. My government will bring forward proposals that strengthen the delivery, accountability, innovation, and productivity of the civil service. These proposals will also seek to safeguard its impartiality and core values to enhance trust and confidence in the institutions of government. My government will bring forward a bill to speed up remediation for people living in homes with unsafe cladding and a draft bill to ban abusive conversion practices. In this volatile world, my government will continue to pursue foreign policy based on a calm assessment of the national interest. It will continue its unflinching support for the brave people of Ukraine who fight on the front line of freedom. My ministers will seek to improve relations with European partners as a vital step in strengthening European security. It will continue to promote long-term peace in the Middle East and the two-state solution in Israel and Palestine. My government will also uphold the United Kingdom's unbreakable commitment to NATO and our NATO allies, including through a sustained increase in defence spending. My government will seek to reinforce the long-term energy, defence and economic security of the United Kingdom as an essential component of strength on the world stage. This will include housing, which can be a source of insecurity for many people. My ministers will bring forward legislation to increase long-term investment in social housing and to reform the leasehold system, including the capping of ground rents. My government will introduce legislation to tackle the growing threat from foreign state entities and their proxies. They will respond to the horrific attack in Southport with measures to protect the British people from extreme violence and honour the victims, the injured and their families. My ministers will also introduce legislation to improve the country's defences against cybersecurity threats. My government will support our gallant armed forces and their families who make considerable personal sacrifices for the collective security and freedom of everyone in the United Kingdom. My ministers will recognise this service with an Armed Forces Bill that improves the service justice system and establishes the Armed Forces Covenant in statute. My ministers believe that energy independence must be a long-term goal of national security and that the nation's energy security requires long-term investment and reform, as demonstrated by recent events in the Middle East. Increased production of clean British energy will help to ensure that enemies of the United Kingdom cannot attack the economic security of the British people. My ministers will therefore introduce an energy independence bill to scale up homegrown renewable energy and protect living standards for the long term. My ministers will also take forward recommendations of the nuclear regulatory review and encourage a new era of British nuclear energy generation. My government will remain a leading advocate for tackling climate change and achieving a world free from poverty. The United Kingdom will also take action to reduce humanitarian need and conflict around the world. My ministers will champion the rights of women and girls to live in a world free from violence. This will include promoting women's full economic and political participation within their societies, with agency over the decisions that impact their lives. Next year, the United Kingdom will take on the G20 presidency and host the G20 summit to drive global growth and reinforce global stability, which is essential for the prosperity of working people across the country. My government is committed to the strength and integrity of the Union of the United Kingdom and will continue to work closely with the devolved governments to deliver for citizens across the whole of the nation. Members of the House of Commons, estimates for the public services will be laid before you. My Lords and members of the House of Commons, other measures will be laid before you. I pray that the blessing of Almighty God may rest upon your counsels.
I need to speak now, otherwise the emergency tape will kick in, but there is now a sort of pause while the King's Standard, I don't know if that's what it's called, but I think David Lammy comes and takes the speech back on one knee, which I feel is a bit of an anachronism now, don't you? It just looks a little odd. But the King's speech is now over. Natasha and I will pick over what was and was not in it shortly, but if you're just joining us, the big political story of the moment is not the legislative programme just set out by King Charles. On behalf of his government, it is the breaking news that Wes Streeting, the Secretary of State for Health, is poised to resign as a precursor to mounting a leadership challenge to the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. The King and the Queen now making their way from the House of Lords chamber. They will, of course, process back through the Royal Gallery and to the robing room, where they will get ready for their departure. 11:48 is the time.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 9 minutes to 12 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I mean, there's a lot going on and there's nothing going on, which sounds like a strangely existential observation, doesn't it? But it is actually true. So the King's speech is a big deal, but Natasha Clark, there wasn't really much in it, as is expected and as is normal.
As expected and as is normal, there's usually not like a rabbit out of the hat. It is not like Budget Day where we are sort of expecting something major. A few little things to pick up on. We have had the confirmation that the government wants to bring forward a draft conversion practices bill to ban conversion therapy. They repeatedly keep saying they're going going to do this. I think Theresa May's government said they were going to do that, and it's not been brought forward. Also, a tourist tax, the government confirming that will be brought in line with other European nations. When you go on holiday, you usually pay a tourist tax, don't you, when you go to stay at a hotel? That's something that many mayors, including Manchester Mayor, I think Andy Burnham has been making the case for this. So essentially bringing us in line with other European nations. So when you go on holiday, you'll be having to pay an extra tourist tax, which will be go to the city. But yes, generally there's most of the stuff that we knew was going to be in the King's speech is in it. We've got late payments bill, we've got more on Northern Powerhouse, steel industry, clean water bill, competition reform, more regulating for growth. Lots of these things that the government have talked about repeatedly, none of which is hugely new. I thought was interesting, actually, James, the European bill, the European Partnership Bill is an interesting one. I didn't think until a couple of weeks ago someone told me this was going to be in it. We've got not much information about what's going to be. It's got a very, very short few pages on this. But one of the lines that I did think was interesting and sort of just worth reflecting on as we're talking about whether Keir Starmer is doing enough to get close to Europe. This bill is going to give powers to the government to fulfil treaty obligations in the agreements with the EU, where it, quotes, serves the national interest. Tory MPs aren't going to like that too much.
Well, that might be substandard. I may have misspoken slightly, but as you say, it will depend on what that means, won't it, and what is feasible, plausible and deliverable. With the majority, whoever the Prime Minister is the size of the current majority, they can more or less do whatever they want.
In theory, yes. In theory, you'd think so. But that seems to me to be quite a big step forward, saying that we could align with other EU treaties if the government believed that that's power. You know, it's sort of as close to the EU as you can get without going back in. And that seems to be what Keir Starmer's government are trying to attempt. So I wonder if that will get some discussion and some MPs either riled up or in total support of that, saying this is exactly what we need to try and sort of separate us from the Greens and separate us from the Liberal Democrats, who are really squeezing Labour's vote, as we saw last week in those local elections.
It's debated now, isn't it, the King's speech? They go back to the House of Commons and debate it, which is a slightly odd prospect, but again, that's what happens every year.
It is what happens every year, and yeah, exactly. It just feels like such an odd moment to be having MPs in the House of Commons talk about sort of governing an agenda and sort of, you know, we're getting on, and we've as part of the sort of documents that the government have released in the last sort of few minutes since the King has made that speech, and we've got an introduction to the King's speech from the Prime Minister, and he's sort of making the case. You know, he said our country stands at a pivotal moment. The world today is more volatile and dangerous than any point in our lifetimes. You know, and this would have been written in light of losing those local elections, it's fair to say. He says, this time will be different. This King's speech shows us it will be different, with a plan to make this country stronger and fairer. So it's interesting to see it's sort of, you know, his framing in light of these election losses. But lots of MPs, like I say, that I've spoken to over the last week, James, especially in light of that speech he gave on Monday, just saying, we still want you to go further. We want you to be bigger and bolder. And they feel that that's not happening.
Indeedy doody. 5 minutes. I've got to stop saying that. I only started yesterday. I've said it about 11 times in the last 24 hours. 12 noon, just around the corner, for people just joining us. We don't really know what to do with this news, because Keir Starmer, or rather Wes Streeting, who had a meeting with Keir Starmer amid the drama earlier this morning.
That's lovely. That's
thank
really
you.
nice.
That might be, well, if I was still on X, I'd probably be tweeting.
What's the verb to blue sky?
I don't know. Skeet, I think. Skeeting. Oh, skeeting about Streeting having a meeting with Starmer amid the drama.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much. But nothing's going to happen now. So for people just joining us, one of Wes Streeting's allies appears to have told journalists from the Times newspaper that he is going to resign and trigger a leadership contest tomorrow, or as soon as tomorrow, which is probably true. You know, there is room for him, of course, to change his mind, to withdraw. It's unlikely he's going to be over the moon with whoever has broken cover on this, particularly as the King was assuming the position in the House of Lords. But what I mean, no one can respond to it until Streeting's actually made his move. And I mean, we can talk about it, and we will in the next hour, but Starmer can't do anything about this until it actually happens. And Streeting... There's a great photograph that Kat Nealon of The Observer has picked up on a still from events in the House earlier, where Streeting is looking ahead in a very unamused fashion, while James cleverly appears to be sort of teasing him and cajoling him. Kat Nealon of The Observer suggests that James Cleverly, who of course would be leader of the opposition if his own leadership bid hadn't been beset by complacency and a degree of numerical incompetence, James Cleverly is saying to Wes Streeting. Have you thought about lending some of your votes to Ange? Heidi Alexander behind Wes Streeting doing a very bad job of trying not to giggle while James... In fact, everyone around them is giggling except Wes Streeting, while James clearly engages in some... inter-party badinage. But nothing's going to happen now for 24 hours, is it? It can't. I mean, Streeting won't choose today to confirm or deny. Well, he might deny. He could say today, I'm definitely not mounting a leadership bid, but that ain't likely. And he ain't going to confirm until he actually does it.
Yes, and we did hear from his team yesterday that they were unlikely to tell us, A, what the contents of this conversation with the Prime Minister has been, and B, whether there would be any sort of next steps for Mr. Streeting. So this MP, sounds like an MP that's spoken to the Times newspaper, has jumped the gun a bit. And if I were Wes Streeting, I'd be feeling totally furious that he's done this today, of all days, just as the King was walking into the Houses of Parliament. But yes, the fact that Wes Streeting's team have not confirmed nor denied any of this, they've not put out any statements, they've not picked up the phone, it lends me to think, firstly, it's probably true.
Yeah.
But B, that they don't want to do anything or say anything today. So are we in a bit of a holding pattern now for the next 24 hours while we wait for a new dawn, not the King's Speech Day, in order to give the government that time, and also to give Wes Streeting time, right? He needs to make sure that he's got the numbers, for goodness sake. And we know what happened with James Cleverly when he thought he did.
Well, he did. He was so confident he had them that
exactly.
He told some of them that they could vote for someone else in order to try and finesse who he would be up against in the final round.
Exactly. And
then lo and behold, he wasn't in the final round.
Yeah, I think that's kind of probably unlikely between those two camps, but you never know. So yes, I think Wes Streeting's team will be making sure that he has got those 81 MPs in order to do so. But it is interesting, and like I said, this is not what we've been being told for weeks and months and days by Wes Streeting's team. They repeatedly keep saying to us, Wes is not going to be the one to trigger it. So there is always the chance that this is a rogue MP trying to force Wes Streeting's hand, and he's still not made up his mind, he's still not decided, because it is a very big decision to challenge the leader of the Labour Party, especially when you are seen as being so divisive, and lots of MPs will not be on your side if you do so.
Sky News going with allies plural, telling Sky News that he is preparing to resign. So all of those messages pinging back and forth at the moment, adding to the sense that this intervention is imminent. Things change, don't they? That meeting earlier today may well have made Streeting realised that Starmer isn't going to put a plan in place for a peaceful transition of power. He's going to fight tooth and nail to hang on to power. He's certainly going to fight tooth and nail to maintain control of the situation, and that puts Streeting in a position where he thinks, well, it's now or never. There may never be that wasn't true before he went to Downing Street this morning. He may have come out of Downing Street believing that this is it now. It's now or never, because Starmer's not going anywhere. He's going to have to be pushed. He ain't going to jump. And that he wouldn't have known that for sure before he went to that meeting.
No, and we should say that, the Labour Party rules mean that the incumbent is automatically on the ballot paper. Yes. So Keir Starmer's name will be automatically there. So, we say Keir Starmer's going to fight. He has said yesterday to his cabinet that he's getting on with the job of governing, and a leadership challenge hasn't been met. We know, we've heard repeatedly from his allies, from people in Downing Street, saying repeatedly that the Prime Minister will fight any challenge. And like I say, he won't have to fight. His name will automatically be there. The idea will be, do you want Wes Streeting, or do you want the current incumbent to stay? Which is a high bar to meet, isn't it?
Streeting would need 20% of the Parliamentary Labour Party to nominate him.
Yeah, that's the 81 MPs that we've been talking about,
to
stand for leader. And as we know there are more than 81 MPs that do want the Prime Minister to go, but I'm absolutely convinced that not all of them will be backing Wes Streeting, and many of them, some of them want Andy Burnham, of course they do, and some of them just want the Prime Minister to go, and they have not decided who they want next, which many people think is totally mad, to be calling for the Prime Minister to go without a replacement.
This is June, July, August, September. It's probably 4 months for this situation to unfold if it does go ahead. 3 to 4 months. Yeah,
I haven't read the specifics of the Labour Party rules which indicate what a timetable would look like, but I think it depends on the Labour Party chair, who's Anna Turley. She sets out that leadership timetable and what that looks like. And it depends on what they want to do. We have seen the Tories, for example, have very short leadership contests where the chairman of the Tory party has decided, we don't want this to drag out for 2 or 3 months. We want to go quickly.
There's different rules in place. Every Labour MP has a period in which to secure secure nominations from 20% of the PLP. You only get on the ballot if you get 20%. People may remember the remarkable circumstances in which Jeremy Corbyn secured that 20% and the motivations of the people that helped him. Another reminder of how unpredictable all of this can be when push actually begins to come to shove. And then the party units would have the chance to make supporting nominations, followed by hustings, and then the vote. It is someone heavily involved in the Labour Party for a number of years has messaged me to say it is a proper pain, and it is deliberately so in order to mitigate challenges. So it is deliberately a painful and painstaking process in order to ensure that nobody does it frivolously.
Exactly. And we also should note that it's not just the MPs that have a say here, it's the Labour MPs, it's the unions and affiliates, of which we have heard from this morning, saying they do believe that we should change the Prime Minister and the Labour leader. And then it's the constituency Labour parties as well, and then the members. So there's a lot of people to consult. This doesn't just take a week or two, it can take months. So the question is whether Labour MPs want to drag this out over many months and have a very painful, protracted contest, of which it looks like it's going to be incredibly dirty, especially if Wes Streeting is the one pulling that trigger.
And it makes the warning in one newspaper this morning from Andy Burnham that he will not welcome a coronation of Wes Streeting. That's a good headline there. Did you spot it, Keith? A coronation street. Ing.
Nice.
Wah, 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 wah. And we're back to the strumpet.
James O'Brien on LBC.
7 minutes after 12 is the time. There is some extraordinary cognitive dissonance, isn't there, in the King, talking about housing crises and poverty in 2026 in the United Kingdom. And I don't want you to think I'm unaware of it. And or that I'm unanimated by it. There's something a little bit unseemly almost about it. The idea that someone can be delivering a speech addressing poverty and housing crises when they own countless properties. One of the biggest landlords in the country, isn't he? But I mean, the properties that are for his own use are innumerable as well. And poverty, while he's wearing jewellery that you could probably house 100 homeless people simply by flogging down the pawnbrokers today. I just mentioning it. I'm not unaware of it, but I'm going to take issue with Susan from Scotland. I'm not putting you in idiot's corner, Susan, yet. It's obscene, James, obscene. Let's have some of them jewels and spend it on social care. Why are you so in awe of ridiculous nonsense? Waving a We Union flag, are you? I'll bet Lewis Goodall isn't. Well, if you felt that coverage that I just provided of the King's speech was awed, reverent, respectful, and, well, insert words of your own choice there, then I'm afraid you're absolutely bonkers. I don't even know what I could have done to demonstrate how unseriously I take an awful lot of that business. But hey-ho, and be careful. Don't start, trying to build up some sort of rivalry between me and Lewis Goodall. That way madness lies. Susan from Scotland. But Michael's been in touch to prove a point I made when I suggested to you that the correct name for that long, thin horn was strumpet, which obviously wasn't true, but I pretended to think it was true in order to get messages like this from Michael, who writes, I don't think the instrument is called a strumpet, James. A strumpet is something else entirely. Thank you, Michael. And then I'm going to read you a message. I've had some lovely messages today. I don't read out the lovely ones. I don't know why. I probably should read them out a little bit more, but it always seems a little bit self-aggrandising. But there have been some really lovely ones today. Thank you for enjoying. I got some rude ones as well, of course, but the general sense was that you enjoyed my attempts to bring some levity to the business end of the King's speech. So thank you for those. But sometimes you just get me, you really do. Please don't read my name out, says this texter. But I'm just about to go to my mum's funeral, and James's reference to the prodigy and his commentary on the King's speech has just made me chuckle on a day when I didn't think I would. And those, I'm going to delete that quickly so that I don't accidentally say your name, but my commiserations, my condolences if you're still listening, and I hope today goes off as well as it possibly can. If it's any consolation at all, the knowledge that your mum knew how much you loved her will be a great comfort to you one day. Maybe not today, Okay, probably, definitely not today. Today's too raw and too difficult. But as the days turn into weeks and the weeks turn into months, and you look back upon a lifetime and a relationship, then the knowledge that she knew how much she meant to you will be a great, great comfort to you. But those are the moments. I don't know what the radio equivalent of a fourth wall is. Do you? You know, when you're in the theatre and you break the fourth wall, or you're on television and you do one of those little asides like Sarah Jessica Parker in Sex and the City. But when I get a message like that, it reminds me, it just reminds me, because I'm always conscious of it, that we are essentially just people who hang out together every day. And I try to look out for you. And when I get messages like that, it reminds me that sometimes we just manage to get it right. So seriously, God bless and good luck today. And thank you for that lovely message. 11 minutes after 12 is the time. Back to business. Let's act as if Wes Streeting is going to announce his leadership bid tomorrow. I'd say it was 85% certain. Natasha's now getting messages from allies of Wes Streeting confirming that they also think that it is about to happen. The brevity of that meeting at Downing Street today suggests to me that Streeting arrived with hopes that were quickly dashed, and those hopes would have involved the roadmap for departure that many people were calling upon Keir Starmer to construct. So not an immediate resignation, but an announcement of what was going to happen. An acceptance that the game was up. That's what Wes Streeting wanted. When he realised that he was not going to get it, that for Keir Starmer, the game is not up, that's when he decided he had little choice but to press the big red button. Marked leadership challenge. So he'll resign as Secretary of State for Health. It's not beyond possibility that Keir Starmer sacks him in the course of this afternoon, if Keir Starmer is absolutely certain that this is what Wes Streeting is planning to do. A bit like what Kemi Badenoch did when honest Bob Jenrick decided to spend the rest of his career pretending that he'd never been in the Tory party, let alone immigration minister, while moaning for the rest of his career about what a mess the Tories made of everything, especially immigration. Kemi Badenoch got wind of that plan from honest Bob, so she handed him his sandwiches wrapped in a roadmap. It's amazing how many complaints I get about that figure of speech. It's one of my all-time favourites, but I'll try and moderate my use of it. So she kicked him into touch. She pushed him before he could jump, effectively. I suppose Starmer could do that. I can't think of a precedent for that happening, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. But we're going to conduct our conversation now as if it is a fait accompli. So Wes Streeting is mounting a leadership challenge against Keir Starmer. It's 13 minutes after 12. I don't have a great deal to say about this, as you would expect, because it has only just happened. I am very keen to hear your absolute gut reaction, your knee-jerk reaction. Normally I'm a bit allergic to knee-jerk reactions because I'm much more interested in the why than the what, but sometimes the what works, and the what works at moments like this. Wes Streeting mounting a leadership challenge to Keir Starmer less than 2 years after Starmer won a landslide general election victory. Albeit a shallow and largely loveless landslide, a landslide numerically it was. What do you think? I'm particularly interested if you are surprised by your initial reaction. But give me a ring now and tell me what your immediate reaction is to the news that Wes Streeting has broken cover and is bidding to oust Keir Starmer as leader of the Labour Party and, of course, Prime Minister. My first thought, and I reserve the right to completely change my mind about this in the course of the next 45 minutes, my first thought is that this is quite weaselly behaviour, a quite self-serving behaviour. It is the opposite of loyalty. It is the opposite of unity. It is the opposite of stability. But it may well be that it is the best chance that the Labour Party has of going into the next general election with a leader capable of winning it. I honestly don't know. But on a personal level, before we get into the politics of it, I'm not immediately sure Wes Streeting is going to emerge from this very well. They often say that he who wears the dagger never wears the crown. It's not entirely true, but it's quite true. Anybody who thinks of John Major's toothache at this moment, or his dentist, is probably as big a political anorak as I have become over the last few years. But there's something about being the one to stab your own leader in the front or the back, the et tu brute moment that I think can tarnish somebody for a very, very long time. And right now, Wes Streeting is in that space for me. I'm a little bit kind of, oh, come on. Really? You're going to hand this kind of gift to your own enemies? A bunch of bozos voting reform because they thought that it would have an impact on national politics and you would somehow get Starmer out as a consequence of voting for the various racists and weirdos that now populate the council chambers of the United Kingdom under Nigel Farage's Christopher Harborne-sponsored flag. You kind of give them a win as well, don't you? In a way? I don't know. I'm going to find out what you think. Hit the numbers now. You really will. Yeah, you will get through, but be quick, all right? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. The time now is 12:16.
James O'Brien on LBC.
15 minutes after 12. I mean, if you look back at Dennis Skinner's contributions during the Queen's speech, they are nowhere near as iconic or as funny as they seem to be at the time. They're rude and they're they're all on YouTube. Sometimes Skinner was a very, very funny man, but quite often he just, in retrospect, comes across as a little bit sort of obnoxious. However, it is believed to be a Labour MP called Torquil Crichton, which does not immediately strike you as a name likely to be associated with a Labour MP, but we live in strange times. Torquil Crichton would have been a sort of 19th century Conservative MP. Torquil Crichton! He is believed to be responsible for a moment of genuine comedy. And just in case you get confused, it's Andy Burnham that you need to have in your mind at this moment. But this is what happened just a few moments ago when Black Rod arrived at the door of the House of Commons.
Not now, Andy. Black Rod.
Why didn't he get laughter or a round of applause? The idea that it was Andy Burnham, I think, because it's not immediately obvious. It's extremely funny, though. A moment of levity during a very serious. It's not that serious, but there we are. Referencing the fact, of course, that the leadership challenge, actual or imagined, is in the forefront of everybody's minds, and it is Wes Streeting who appears to be the one to pull the proverbial trigger, and I want to know what you think about that. Angela's in Barnet to start the process. Angela, what would you like to say?
Well, James, I'm shocked and I'm disgusted, and as I'm a member of the Labour Party, and if Wes Streeting ends up standing for the leadership, I'm not voting for him.
Why not?
Because I think the way he's behaved is appalling. I think the way they've all behaved is appalling. What's the matter with them? They're no better than the Tories now. We've waited, James, 14 years for them to get into power. As Labour supporters and voters, I've waited 14 years, and now look how they're behaving. I mean, it almost makes me want to cry.
I can hear the emotion in your voice. Is there nothing in the results of last week's elections that sort of moderates your disgust? You sort of think, oh, well, I'm very sad that this is happening, but it's probably for the best.
No, I don't think it is for the best. You know what? The alternative is no better. Who's going to stand? Andy Burnham's not an MP.
No, but he could be. He could. I mean, there's a 3 to 4 month process going forward now, so it's tricky. Yeah. And Streeting may be calculating that as well, of course, which I don't think is going to give him any leeway in your reckoning. He may well be calculating that if he moves now, then he won't have to face Burnham. But if he waits for the next opportunity, Burnham could be in place.
But Wes Streeting has got a majority of 700. What are the chances are he's going to get voted out at the next election, and then we have another leadership thing if he wins.
Good Lord. It's all going on, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just crazy. What's the matter with them? What? I mean, why don't they need to grow up?
Well, if I push you briefly away from the them to the him, does your opinion of Wes Streeting change at all in this moment, or is it merely...
Yes, and I used to really like him, James.
That's interesting.
I mean, I think a lot of Labour supporters really liked him. He was straight-talking, he'd answer a question, and now he's this weaselly little person whispering in dark corners, plotting, and it's horrible. And I'm shocked. I'm really shocked.
I suppose from your point of view, then let's hope it's not true, although all of the indications are that it almost certainly, or that it probably is. Thank you, Angela. 22 minutes. I almost feel I should be offering you condolences, but we are operating on the presumption that these reports will be proved accurate. We don't know for certain yet that Wes Streeting is going to resign tomorrow to launch a leadership bid against Keir Starmer. But let's say that he is. How do you respond to that news? 22 minutes after 12 is the time. I should probably mention that if you want to listen to quite in-depth, long, very personal and human interviews with Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham, Keir Starmer and David Lammy, who no one ever mentions in this kind of context, but you never know. Why is no one... I mean, I don't know whether Sadiq Khan's got any interest in the big job, but it's odd that they're talking about one mayor whose record is nowhere near as impressive as another mayor as potential prime ministers. But anyway, the four obvious contenders in a coming leadership battle, should Keir Starmer decide to fight it, are Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham and Keir Starmer, all of whom have appeared on Full Disclosure, one of whom in front of an audience, which obviously creates a slightly different energy. But we should probably put that together as a package for people, if they all do end up on a ballot, to familiarise themselves a little bit more with what they're like, not away from the microphones, obviously, or the cameras, but in a slightly more human and intimate environment. Angela, thank you. David is in Bayswater. David, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, James.
Hello.
Yeah, so basically, I think we need to make a distinction between people like Wes and the ordinary MPs, because Wes has not stood up against any of the policies that Keir Starmer has tried to get through Parliament and failed. And so clearly he didn't object to these, or he didn't publicly say
Well, he's
he
a
did.
cabinet member, mate. He's not allowed to.
No, but can I just finish my point, James?
No, you can't. Don't be so rude. He's a cabinet member. He can't.
Right, okay.
A cabinet member can't object to what the government is doing without leaving the cabinet. It's called collective
exactly my point.
It's called collective cabinet responsibility, and it's been part of our unwritten constitution for over 100 years.
But James, my point is, it goes to show he's putting his own self-interest.
No, it doesn't.
What he's good. Well, in my opinion, can I just finish my point?
No. John's in Telford. John, what would you like to say?
I've got to follow that. Hi.
Can I just finish my ludicrous point that bears no resemblance to reality whatsoever, because I'm me and it matters? So carry on, John.
I will have my say.
You will.
Hi, sorry, James, first time caller, long time listener.
Welcome.
But it's only you, right?
It is, correct.
I think this is actually great news for Starmer. Opportunity knocks now. He can have the cabinet reshuffle. He can drop Angela into health if he wanted to. Kill two birds with one stone. If Streeting doesn't get the 81 points, then that's
a big if.
That problem.
It's a big if.
It is a big if.
Susan in Scotland's favourite LBC presenter Lewis Goodall has just posted that if Wes Streeting challenges and has the number, and that's a big if, he says, then the next big decision will be with Ed Miliband.
Well, or cabinet reshuffle has to be done because Wes is out. Therefore, he can seem to be doing something that might kind of feed the media beast and calm things down.
And your personal opinion of, reaction to Wes Streeting, is it changing in the moment? My inbox is not very pleasant reading for the Health Secretary, but I'm interested in what you think.
It's not doing him any favours, is it? His timing's off. It's not doing any favours at all. He was widely seen as the come-in man, but today is not that day. So I think actually he's doing himself more harm than he is to Starm.
Yes, it could well be. Unless, of course, it all comes off perfectly and he's Prime Minister this time next September.
Yeah. In which case, you'll have forgotten this conversation and I'll be all right.
Yeah, same here. So luckily, none of it's recorded. 26 minutes after 12 is the time. Streeting moves first. What do we think of that? Charlie's in Hitchin. Charlie, what would you like to say?
I just think it's probably the first domino in many dominoes to fall for the Labour Party the next general election.
So why do you say that?
Well, I just think we're going kind of down the same route that the Tories went, where it's leader after leader,
they can't.
all vying for power. And I think really the next Prime Minister should be the person that doesn't want to be Prime Minister. I think that's probably...
I think politics should be full of people who don't want to be in politics. It's one of my pet theories as well, actually, like the old Groucho Marx line about clubs. You see, I was about to scoff then, Not quite as violently as I scoffed with the caller before last, but I was about to scoff and say, oh, don't be ridiculous. Of course we're not going to go down a Tory route of having leader after leader after leader. But 2 years ago, Charlie, if you'd said to me, I don't think Labour are going to be any different from the Tories, they'll probably be talking about changing the leadership in 2 years' time, I'd have scoffed. I'd have gone, oh, don't be daft. Of course they're not. This is a complete difference. So you can't really say anything with confidence anymore.
Well, I think that's probably my problem, and why I feel a bit disenfranchised with our democracy right now is, none of these leaders come in and actually stick to what they're trying to do. I feel like the parties are so fragmented. The Labour Party, you've got the Labour left, you've got the Labour centre and the Labour, right, and nothing can get done. And meanwhile, we're all the sorry people trying to get by, and none of these policies are happening.
It's a brilliant point. Because, of course, Starmer's failures are partly as a consequence of the left of his own party. People to the left of him, which is probably most of the parliamentary Labour Party, and Wes Streeting is perceived as being, if anything, to the right of Starmer. So the idea that he's the natural heir apparent is pie in the sky. And of course it also adds to that thing you've just touched on, which isn't pretty, is it? That this just speaks to the picture of chaos. It speaks to the catalogue, the continuing catalogue of chaos that typifies British politics and has done now for the best part of a decade. And that's where we started the show at 10 o'clock this morning. Keir Starmer and Labour was supposed to be bringing an end to that particularly chaotic chapter. Charlie, great stuff, thank you. Zoe's in Stonehouse. Zoe, your gut reaction to this, and we're calling it news for the time being.
It's very strong. I'm very nervous at the moment, mind you. But
it's only
I'm
me.
very angry.
It's only me, Zoe. It's only me. It's only me. It's only me. I'm a pussycat. I'd never rude to anybody. I never cut callers off with little reason or justification. You're absolutely safe here, Zoe.
No, and don't butt in or anything.
No, none of that.
No,
none of that.
It's just my gut reaction. I'm
Yes.
extremely angry. I've spent all week trying to get in touch with my local MP here, Simon Ofer, who obviously is backing ousting Starmer.
Okay.
I don't think it is going to do us a great deal of good because, I mean, I know you don't go on Threads, but I'm on Threads now.
Okay.
And the amazing support on there for the Prime Minister it's incredible.
Well, Blue Sky is similar, but it doesn't translate into any opinion polls.
No,
it's not. I mean, it's even more. I mean, it's anecdotal, isn't it? And a plural of anecdote is not data.
It is. However, I just I wouldn't vote for Wes Streeting. He has gone down in my opinion. It's all just more drama, as you say, for Starmer, and we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere forward.
But if this is the best chance,
yes.
To go into the next general election with someone capable of winning it. That involves accepting that Keir Starmer isn't, which I don't think you have done. You haven't accepted that Keir Starmer isn't capable of winning the next general election. For the record, nor have I. But that is Streeting's only defence, really, isn't it?
What, that he
that's why he's doing it. Yes, exactly that. I can do better than Keir Starmer will.
No, well, then I think that he'd better be careful what he wishes for because he'll just be skewered as anyone who takes over will be, because that's just how it goes for Labour.
There is one element that we've all overlooked, or at least I have overlooked, and it's been picked up. You mentioned Threads. The platform of choice for me is Blue Sky these days, where one of my all-time favourite contributors is a chap called Roland Smith, who is probably a more assiduous watcher of unhinged headlines even than I am. And he points out, Streeting will know the adage that he who wields the knife fails to wear the crown, but I suspect he knows he can't win, which is why he's wielding the knife. I hadn't thought of that. I'd pointed it out, that his path to power looks almost insuperable, because he is so unpopular on the left of the party. But that, of course, is not going to be something that Wes Streeting is unaware of. So, arguably, we now do a 180-degree turn from thinking that Wes Streeting is acting out of unalloyed and undiluted self-interest to wondering whether he is, in fact, acting in what he sees as the best interests of the party, even if it involves him being tarnished by the act of betrayal and not having any real prospect of coming away with the cup. That's fascinating. That's really interesting. And it's a gut reaction, which is what I'm canvassing from you as well at the moment on 0345 6060973. Amelia Cox has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:34 is the time. I'd tell you something. If you think I'm bad at this job, you should have known me when I was a showbiz editor, which is admittedly now a very, very long time ago. But there is a story in the news today that has brought back to me with blood-chilling accuracy what an appalling showbiz journalist I was. I was good at interviews. I'm not being conceited. I was good at interviews and I was good at writing. But I had absolutely no nose for a story, which is a bit of a problem on the showbiz beat. The worst example ever was probably when I was backstage at a music show, a TV show, not Top of the Pops, but it was like, I'm very old, you know, so it was like an attempt to be like Top of the Pops. Is Top of the Pops even still going? Might have been the Pepsi chart show. And I saw Chris Evans coming out of Jerry Halliwell's dressing room. And I just thought to myself, oh, that's nice. I didn't know they were friends. And then, of course, I got to work the next morning and every other newspaper, all of whom had been in attendance, are running a story about a romance between Chris Evans and Jerry Halliwell. So I had absolutely no excuse. I'd literally been there. I think I even saw it before other people did. And I just managed to completely miss the boat. There's a story in the news today, it's Wednesday today, spoiler alert. There's a story in the news today that I have been aware of since Saturday, and it didn't actually cross my mind to mention it. I don't know if it would have merited much coverage on LBC, to be honest with you, because it's very much a showbiz story. But I could easily have given a nod to a pal who's still on that pitiless beat, but I didn't, because I am absolutely appalling at knowing what a story is and what a story isn't. Special prize today, a handshake and a pat on the head, for anyone who can guess what story it is. In today's news, the showbiz story in today's news that I've known about for over half a week. Okay? And it comes with a punchline, this, so let's hope that I remember to tell you. 12:37 is the time. Wes Streeting. Cometh the hour, cometh the man, perhaps. Anthony's in Dartford. Anthony, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yes. We're living in an age of ping-pong politics. It's almost like a football management term, isn't it? You know, if you don't have two good games, you're out. You're out. You're literally out. The thing is, I feel a little bit torn all over the place, really, because Keir Starmer, yes, I know he's dull as dishwater, but he has scored some goals. He just hasn't had the celebrations. You know, he hasn't made the noise.
Yes, I like that.
But I don't think his and Angela Rayner's approach to politics has been extremely dynamic in any way whatsoever. I mean, when we go back to, you know, Two Jags and Tony Blair, you know, they kind of appealed to both sides of the public, didn't they? You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And we just don't have that anymore. People want to be excited by politics. They're not with Starmer stuff.
It's weird, though, because he defended Ukraine. He's coped with Donald Trump's destruction of the Atlantic Alliance, which is an extremely big deal. Historians will be making a much bigger meal out of that than we have recently. And yeah, there's a good piece in The Spectator, actually, that's just dropped by Nick Cohen. He points out he somehow ended up more unpopular than Liz Truss, despite never causing an economic crisis, and more unpopular than Nigel Farage, even though the worst allegation against him was that he took free suits from a friend rather than 5 million quid in secret from a crypto billionaire. It is bonkers, but it's also true. That's the problem, isn't it? That's what you're talking about.
But, I mean, when we're talking about Wes Streeting and stuff like, you know, and him coming in, it's no surprise. There's no surprise that there is a challenge coming. You know, when Starmer seems to be at his weakest, at his most vulnerable. I mean, I don't like the way that Starmer treated Corbyn, ousting him from the Labour Party after, you know, Jeremy Corbyn got the most amount of memberships for the Labour Party.
Well, that was over a very specific thing that he was suspended from the Labour Party. It wasn't. I mean, it's not linked to his popularity or unpopularity as Labour leader.
But then when we say about his he doesn't like to be challenged. I think he likes to be the top dog, you know, and I think he's very threatened by Andy Burnham. We saw it again, didn't we, a few weeks ago, you know, when Andy Burnham was on the fence whether he's going to be the mayor or stand to be an MP again. That was blocked.
Yeah, and Angela Rayner has come out and said so, of course, that she doesn't approve of that.
Yeah. So I just think that Starmer he's vanilla, isn't he? He's Magnolia. He doesn't really...
He can't be vanilla, mate, because everybody hates him. Vanilla is like a byword. It's not. He's Marmite, except nobody loves him.
I know what you mean. A lot of people don't like Magnolia either. They don't choose it these days.
Magnolia.
But
what do you think? I mean, like, in a sense, because of course Roland Smith has thrown a bit of a cat among my pigeons by pointing out Streeting might know he can't win, but he's decided someone's got to do something and nobody else is going to. So he's like forgive this analogy, Anthony, because it takes us a long way from sport, unless you're very familiar with the career of Gary Lineker, where Streeting is playing the role of the laxative here in the process of flushing out Keir Starmer.
Yeah, he is. But look at him. He's a very what's the word? Ambitious guy.
Clearly.
You know, he's extremely ambitious. He's rocketed through. He's done some good things. He's tried to, you know, pick up the NHS, digitalise it. You know, he's got rid of NHS England. He's done some good things. He has done some good things. But is he just another one who is out for himself? I don't know.
I don't think any of them are, to be honest with you. Not in this iteration of the Labour Party. I don't think any of them are out for themselves in quite such a base way as some people are. And by complete coincidence, some more breaking news for you. The Parliamentary Standards Commissioner has revealed that it will be launching an investigation into Nigel Farage's secret £5 million donation from a cryptocurrency billionaire set to make absolutely unimaginable fortunes from policies that Nigel Farage has already announced that he would introduce if he ever became Prime Minister. The billionaire, of course, who owns 12% of the company that Nigel Farage sat in this very studio praising and promoting, without revealing to Nick, who was conducting the interview at the time, that he'd just trousered £5 million from the bloke who owned 12% of it. That on top of the £22 million that the same bloke had given to Farage's various political parties, and the £1 million that he gave to Boris Johnson. There is a story doing the rounds. A lot of you are cross with me for not talking about it. Listen, we are subject to law like everybody else is. So if one hideous character threatens to take legal action against another hideous character over allegations made by the second hideous character about the first hideous character, I have to wait until my lawyers tell me that I can cover that story. So don't be a fool and think that it's evidence of me not wanting to talk about something or being frightened or cowed. At least nobody's suggested I've been silenced. That ship seems to have sailed. Anthony, great stuff. Mike's in Sutton. Mike, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. Listened to you since before it was popular. This is the first time I think I've ever been...
Since before it was fashionable.
Yeah.
Love it.
This is the first time I felt sufficiently passionate to call you up about something, believe it or not.
Yeah, go on.
Look, I'm human. Look, I'm full disclosure. I'm a Labour Party member, and I'm a bit of a Starmer loyalist, so that's where I come from.
Yes.
I don't think Wes Streeting quite realises within the party that most of his support are from people like me on that side of the party that will be absolutely fuming about this.
Yeah.
You know, it's absolute madness, and he'll have alienated a massive proportion of the people like me that thought, you know what, one day after Starmer's gone or whatever happens, would vote for Wes next. Not a chance now. I tell you what, 5 years' time, if it's Burnham and Streeting, and I really dislike Burnham, I'd vote Burnham.
So this is... what about that suggestion that Streeting is forcing the issue without much hope of actually coming out on top?
Well, I think people suggesting that probably are talking about the same Wes Streeting the rest of us now. I think he's an incredibly ambitious person. And I would be highly sceptical of anything like that being pushed. And you know what? He wouldn't win. If Starmer stood, Starmer wins. If somebody else stands against Streeting, there's a whole host of other people that would be more popular in the Labour Party to the left. So he's opening it back up again. I cannot understand it for the life of me, James.
No, well, except that he really does feel, and a lot of people around him and other contenders really do feel that Starmer's reached the end of the road, and you categorically don't feel that, I'm afraid I'm rather pathetically oscillating between thinking that and not thinking that, for which I can only apologise, but at least I'm honest. You think Starmer deserves to be given another chance, as he pleaded for on Monday?
Yeah, look, I'm not immune to it, or James. I mean, you'd have to have your head in the sand.
Yeah.
But I have an element of trust. I have an element of respect for what the fourth guy to win Labour an election. Give him more than 2 years. We're becoming a country that, if we allow that to happen, whatever party it is, it becomes ungovernable.
That's my worry.
Let's give the guy a bit of a chance. And if you're a year, 18 months out from an election, then you can have that conversation. But it's just madness 2 years in. Absolute madness.
That's my worry. And then if whoever comes up next doesn't produce the goods in 5 minutes flat, they'll start talking about replacing him or her as well. And I'm afraid that is feasible now. And it used to be a Conservative condition, and now it would appear to have been contagious, and it's infected Labour as well. It is 12:45. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I may catch up. I don't know if there is any more information to give you, but that £5 million that Nigel Farage accepted in secret from a cryptocurrency billionaire based in Thailand called Christopher Harborne, who uses a different name when conducting business in Thailand, is being investigated by the Parliamentary Commissioner, despite Nigel Farage insisting that they'd already investigated it themselves, and he had absolutely nothing to account for. It's 12:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:48 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I said I'd tell you what the story was. Eric Clapton was on stage in Barcelona at the weekend. I think it was Barcelona. And some fool in the audience threw a record at him. A sort of a record in a record sleeve. And as a consequence of that, he called off the concert. He left the stage a little early, much to the disappointment of the people that were in the crowd. He's 81 years old, and as he was walking off stage to prepare for his encore, the vinyl sleeve came spinning towards him, hitting him in the chest, which would be really scary, wouldn't it? If regardless of your age, if you were on a stage and someone threw something at you, it would really disturb you. My friend Mike was in the audience. Mike Sanchez, himself an absolutely brilliant musician who's on tour in the UK this summer, and who has supported Eric Clapton in the past. And he brought it to my attention on Saturday. But in my classic tradition as a first-class showbiz journalist, the worst showbiz journalist ever, I completely missed the fact that this would constitute a proper news story until yesterday, when it started appearing on all the news sites, and today when it's appeared in your newspapers. Eric Clapton walking out of a concert after being hit in the chest by a record. Apparently, get ready for this, Keith, you'll like this song. Apparently he was backstage and they were saying to him, and it's terrible someone's thrown a record at you, Eric, but are you going to go back on? And he said, no, I'm not. And that's vinyl. Yeah? Vinyl? No? Oh. Rachel's in Manchester. Rachel, what would you like to say?
I'm just infuriated, if I'm being honest.
Go on.
It has become a circus, an absolute circus. I think for people like me who's a Labour, lifelong Labour voter, I'm a single mum. I earn a good salary. I'm in £50,000 a year and I'm struggling. I think what the Labour Party is failing to see here, the problem isn't Keir, the problem is the party. They've got no plan. They can't move fast enough on things. They've become the party of benefits. And I could not vote for Wes Streeting. He's not someone I would think could do a better job than Keir Starmer. So what is the plan that Wes Streeting has today?
Well, I suppose we'd have to hear him out first before we could conclude that.
I don't think he'd have anything to say, James. What could he possibly say?
Just to clarify, it was Madrid, not Barcelona, where Eric Clapton got hit with a record sleeve. But that's not necessarily. Yeah, well, it's obviously not at the top of your list of priorities at the moment. But
not right now. I just think this whole thing is infuriating. I'm at a point now where. What are we going to do as a country? Because I can tell you, if Wes Streeting pulls the trigger today, the Labour Party can say goodbye to the next general election.
Why do you think that? Because Starmer is unspeakably unpopular.
But is it Starmer that's unpopular?
Yes. It is. No, it is. And I don't get it, but it is. I mean, his personal popularity rating is off the charts bad.
Because people are not educated in politics, and what happens is nowadays when people don't see change fast enough, they blame the politician, the Prime Minister. All the reform voters think that Keir Starmer's to blame for the fact that the votes keep coming in, not the Conservatives. So that's why he is unpopular. Wes Streeting will be just as unpopular. The next Labour leader will be just as unpopular. There is no end to this.
Well, we talked a lot on this programme. Indeed, everyone who does this for a living has talked a lot about Starmer's personal and particular set of skills, about his clubbability, his intonation, his voice, his delivery, his confidence. All of those things would be different with a change of leader. We talk a lot about charisma without being 100% sure what it means.
Well, hasn't got any charisma.
No, but Angela Rayner has. Angela Rayner has.
I agree. I completely agree. And, you know, I could probably put a vote behind Angela Rayner.
Yes.
Andy Burnham, not so much. I don't think he's got the charisma that she holds, but she would be very unpopular with certain parts of the party.
And they would come for her with not just the political bias, but with all of the misogyny and the rest of it, and the class and the snobbery that underpins newspapers owned by various viscounts and foreign billionaires.
Streeting is making a huge mistake, because if he thinks that people are going to get behind him, most of the country right now are pointing the finger at Keir Starmer because they don't understand that the problems that we're having are due to wars in Iran, Brexit, all of those things.
14 years of Tory rule. But isn't it on him? Final question. Shouldn't he have made that case more powerfully then, Rachel?
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said, for me, Keir can go, but it's who's going to replace him. And right now, they don't have a plan or a person who's any better. So if I was them, I'd shut up until they did. And that's all I can say, honestly.
Give her a cup of tea. Oh, fantastic. Great stuff. Thank you, Rachel. No, thank you. We'll do this again, I hope. No support whatsoever for Wes Streeting at the moment. And this is, you know, I am essentially a left-leaning radio presenter, albeit that I'm the king of the centrist dads. I am surprised. There's nobody. I mean, given the amount of clamour for change, you'd think somebody would at least be saying, thanks, Wes. Whether you end up winning or not, at least someone is pressing the button. At least someone is stirring the pot. But at the moment, extraordinary levels of opposition and disappointment in Wes Streeting. Natasha Clark is back in the studio. What do we know about this investigation into, what's his name again? The chap who accepted a secret £5 million from a cryptocurrency billionaire based in Thailand who uses a different name to conduct his business in Thailand, which I will remember by 1 o'clock today.
That's the one. Yes, so according to reports in the BBC, they understand that the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner has decided to begin an inquiry into whether the Reform leader Nigel Farage breached House of Commons rules by accepting that £5 million gift. We know that he hasn't declared it. And whenever reporters have approached him about this, the Reform Party leader and indeed the Reform Party have repeatedly said that under their understanding of the rules, they think he doesn't need to declare it. They think it doesn't breach rules. And they think that Nigel Farage has accepted legal counsel, which has told him that he didn't need to do so. It's unclear at the moment whether this is indeed open, this investigation is indeed definitely open, because they've not given us a statement. It's just the report from the BBC's Chris Mason. Again, we talk of reputable journalism. He is, of course, a reputable journalist and reputable source, but we have not got a statement yet from the parliamentary authorities confirming this news. Now, we usually do get a statement from them saying that they have had these allegations reported to them and indeed they will open investigation, but we have not had that news. Indeed, many MPs do think that this was inevitable, that he was going to face such a probe. But again, when I've been speaking to people within the Reform Party, they're confident that Nigel Farage has done nothing wrong.
Although I've seen various interviews in which because they've all given money to the party, haven't they? All the senior members. Nick Candy, the Treasurer, has given $1 million. This Christopher Harborne character, otherwise known as Chakrit Sakunkrit, based in Thailand, he's given £22 million, I think,
to the Reform Party.
To the party itself, £5 million to Farage. Richard Tice has given millions to the party. Zia Yusuf has given a lot of money to them. They've all given. There's no one in that up apart from poor old 30p Lee. They've all given money to the party, but this is money given to Farage personally,
exactly.
£5 million.
And the rules are different.
But what they're not confident of, I've heard various members of that inner circle, or sort of donor circle, being asked whether or not they're confident he hasn't taken money from anybody else, and none of them can say that they are confident that he hasn't taken money from anybody else, because if he hasn't shared it with them, just like presumably
that's
he didn't share this one either.
Yes, and again, it's not clear how this information got into the public domain, because of course course, it was before Nigel Farage was an MP, and there are different rules which, you don't have to abide by. If you're not an MP, you don't have to declare. If you or I, James, managed to get our hands on £5 million, we don't need to declare it. But this is different. The rules for elected politicians are, of course, understandably much, much higher, and do need to be declared if you're getting that sort of money declared. But equally, it hasn't been done so. Nigel Farage believes that because he wasn't an MP at the time, he didn't need to. And I'm sure you've been hearing him when he's been speaking about this, and lots of journalists have been asking about this. He hasn't been hugely willing to answer questions on it.
Bernard Manning.
But he has implied that the information that was released about this has been gotten by illegal means. Now, he hasn't told us exactly what that meant or what's happening. I'm hearing from my sources in the Reform Party that they're considering taking legal action over this. They have said that before. But again,
a lot of legal action being considered over there at the moment.
Indeed. But like I say, they believe that Nigel Farage has sought legal counsel, has spoken to people, and he doesn't believe that he needs to declare this. I'm just getting...
Just to be absolutely clear, regardless of whether... no one is disputing that he took £5 million in secret from this billionaire who's based in Thailand and has made all of his money out of cryptocurrency, and shortly afterwards announced policies he would introduce as Prime Minister that would be to the immeasurable benefit of cryptocurrency billionaires, just like the one who gave him £5 million in secret that he chose not to tell anybody about.
Yeah, completely. Just to bring to you, one of my sources has said that they are aware that this is the case, that this story is true. Again, we haven't got a comment from the Commissioner, but I can tell you that one of my sources in Parliament has said, we can say that LBC understands that this is the case, that the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner, Daniel Greenberg, has written to MPs and written to parties interested and involved to say that he has opened an investigation into Nigel Farage. That's being confirmed by our sources now here at LBC.
A question is also being asked today about some helicopter rides that he took in the course of campaigning, but we are almost out of time, so they'll have to wait for another day. Thank you very much indeed, LBC's political editor Natasha Clark, in the middle of what I suspect will continue to be a rather busy day. President Trump has just landed in Beijing. Whether or not he's aware of that, I'll leave you to decide for yourself. But the rest of us can say with some confidence that is quite an important trip, about which we will learn more in the course of today and indeed tomorrow. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can also stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinions. You can listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, the best bits from my LBC show every day. So do download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Tom Swarbrick will be with you at 4, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.